Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep these long stories coming. Also, for even more police horror stories, check out my new channel. The link's in the description and pinned comment. I'd love it if you stop by and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. What time is it where you are and which city are you listening from tonight? Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. I slid the cruiser to a stop under a sputtering street lamp, rain sizzling on the hood. I stared up at the wrought iron gate guarding the property, the emblem etched into its center half hidden by ivy slick with water. Evergreen Road, Number 7, was etched into my memory from 2 years before. Back then, it was a standard domestic disturbance call. Now, dispatch said screams had been heard. Possible bodily harm, the dispatcher had added, her voice clipped. I flicked on my overhead lights, watched the blue and red rhythm swipe across the driveway's puddles, and unclipped my flashlight. My boots hit the gravel with a muffled crunch as I approached the gate's keypad, fingers trembling, partly from the cold, partly from knowing what or who might be behind these walls. I punched in the code we'd been given, 4 digits supplied by dispatch. The gate sighed open. Inside, the driveway stretched straight toward a 2-story modernist mansion. Its tall windows glowed like watchful eyes. I stepped through a swarm of mosquitoes, their wings slapping against my face shield, and called over the radio, Unit 12 on scene. No sign of forced entry. I'll make contact. Echo answered through the static, Copy, Unit 12. The front door was ajar. I pushed through, boot heels clicking on pale stone tile. The entryway smelled faintly of eucalyptus and antiseptic. A single sconce light flickered, its bulb sputtering out then back on. In the corner, an umbrella stand held 3 umbrellas, all dry. The rain was coming through somewhere else. I crossed my arm, scanning for movement. A grand piano sat beneath a skylight, ivory keys gleaming. None pressed, none stained, no music, no body, just silence, taut like a wire. I whispered to myself, "Show yourself." Nothing. I wept. I ran a hand over the piano's lacquered side, fingertips leaving streaks. Then I noticed the sheet music. The page printed with a child's shaky scrawl, notes annotated in red ink. A single name scrawled beneath in the same crimson, M. A code name I'd seen in old case files. A pop star and actress whose face had burned across tabloid covers. M had gone off the radar in 2002 after the media frenzy over her. What? I wasn't sure, but I'd bookmarked her phone number once during an investigation, hoping to check in if anything ever came up. I moved deeper into the house, flashlight beam cutting through shadow. At the top of a short flight of stairs, a landing opened onto a hallway lined with closed doors. The wood floor was damp where someone had tracked water from outside. I heard a soft creak, like a board pressing under weight. My heart thudded. Unit 12 to dispatch, possible occupant, I'll call again. The radio crackled, but no backup promised arrival in less than 5 minutes. Too long. I kicked open the nearest door. A master bedroom flooded with moonlight through gap in blackout shades. The air was cool, tinged with sweat and fear. Beside the bed, a phone handset lay off the cradle, its cord severed. My jaw clenched. That meant someone had been here after the call went out. My light swung across the room. Dress clothes scattered, a high-end camera bag tossed near the dresser. In the mirror's reflection, I saw something moving behind me. I spun, finger on my holster trigger guard. Nothing but the hallway wall. My breath caught. I eased closer to the mirrored surface. fingerprints smudged across the glass, smeared with something dark. I swallowed, leaned out, and counted doorways back to the entry. A soft sob drifted through the open doorway behind me. I exhaled. I'm here to help. Police, if you need medical, we've got paramedics coming. The sob intensified, becoming ragged. I inched toward the door, flashlight raised. The hallway stretched empty beyond. I followed the sound down the corridor, past a study door that rattled slightly, as though something inside had brushed against it. The sob led me to a glass-walled music room at the hall's end. The door stood open. Inside, a grand harp sat silent, strings slack. On the floor, a single high-heeled pump lay heel down in a small pool of water, clear, rainwater, not blood, runoff from a skylight crack. I holstered my weapon and knelt to inspect the shoe. Brand new, Italian, 5-inch stiletto. Whoever wore it had taken it off carefully, not dropped it in flight. My radio barfed static. Unit 12, everything okay? I stepped back, light sweeping the harp's angle frame. A photograph sat on its bench. A Polaroid of two women laughing at a nightclub, one holding a microphone, the other raising a glass. The laughing woman wore a distinctive star pendant I recognized from a late-night interview, another celebrity, Jay. Jay had been on rehab leave that month for exhaustion and depression. Her track record had me mark that as important. I gathered the Polaroid and slipped it into an evidence bag. The sobbing stopped. My pulse synchronized with the rain's pulse on the skylight above. I crept back to the hallway. Across the marble floor, footprints glistened. Bare footprints. They led down the next corridor, turning left toward the east wing. I followed, careful not to slip. The corridor felt colder. My breath fogged. A door at the far end was slightly open. From inside, muffled arguing, a man's deep voice, and a woman's trembling response. I flipped on my mic. Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, come out with your hands up. Silence. Then the man's voice, low but strained. Don't, stay away. He sounded familiar. A hush settled as if the house held its breath. The static in my earpiece cut in and out. I edged toward the door, grip tight. I swung it wide. Inside, an ensuite bathroom, dark save for the night vision glow from a security monitor in the corner showing the property's exterior cameras. The man was there, leaning against the marble sink, wet from head to toe. That rain had poured straight through the broken skylight. Someone had punched out a pane. He wore designer jeans and a drenched t-shirt. His face was wet, but I couldn't tell if from water or tears. He saw me and froze, pupils dilating. From just behind him, a cry, a woman's voice, urgent, terrified, from the shower stall around the corner. I called for backup, then strode past him, flashlight unlocking details. The shower curtain drawn tight, soaked through. I yanked it back in a single motion. Nothing but dripping tile. I heard his voice behind me, soft. She's here. You have to. Find her. No name, no plea, just desperation. My radio cut out again. Through the static I heard, "Go back. Misdial." But the words meant nothing in that moment. I turned back to the man. He held out a hand, not to fight, but to beg. His knuckles were bruised. "You have to trust me," he said, voice raw. "They're gone by now." I took a breath. The tile floor under my boots was slippery. The shower ran itself empty. The monitor flickered off. The skylight above hissed. I shone my light up to the jagged edge of missing glass and wondered who had called it in, and why no security guard had answered when I rang earlier. A distant siren cut through the rain, rolling toward the estate. I knelt beside the prone monitor, its wires snaking like roots. I saw the man in the screen's last flicker, alone in the courtyard, staring up. Then the feed went black. My eardrums popped with the sound of my own heartbeat. I stood, shoulders tight, and offered my hand to help him up. His wet fingers closed around mine for a moment. Then, as the first patrol car lights bounced through the window, he slipped free and disappeared down the corridor. I called after him. No answer. I was left in the dark with the drip-drip of water and the echo of a sob that wouldn't quiet. In my pocket, the Polaroid pressed cold against my thigh. Outside, the gate closed with a final click. Dispatch logged it as a misdial, disturbance unfounded. I filed my report in pencil, careful to note only facts. Shoe, photo, broken skylight, no bodies. The rest I left unsaid. And when I drove away, I could still hear the woman scream, fading into the rain, and a voice whisper my name from somewhere in the dark behind me. I rapped my knuckles against a heavy oak door, its grain slick under my glove. No answer. I could feel the hush behind the door, thick as fog. Rain pattered on the roof's eaves, drumming a slow, measured beat. I drew my flashlight across the entry hall again. Polished concrete floors. A single leather armchair turned on its side. Its legs snapped off at the joints. I knelt, caught a glint of metal under the chair. A phone charger, cord frayed. Whoever had run through here wasn't thinking straight. I clamped the charger in an evidence bag and stood, flashlight cutting through the gloom. A floor plan, hanging crooked on the wall, showed the layout. Entry, living room, kitchen, east wing. The east wing was where I heard the muffled arguing. When I turned the corner, I almost slipped on a slick of black oil pooling at my feet. Heat from the floor vents hadn't dried it yet. Oil trailed down the corridor like spilled ink, leading me on. I followed it, boots sliding, until the oil ended at the threshold of a home theater room. The door was closed. I grasped the handle, felt its chill, and pushed. The hinges groaned. Inside, rows of plush seats faced a giant screen, blank and dark. The carpet underfoot smelled like stale popcorn and something fouler. On the front row, I found a single popcorn kernel stuck to the vinyl seat back, yellowed, old. My light swept upward. Halfway up the screen, a voice echoed, distorted through hidden speakers. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice sounded like someone I once knew, thin, weary. I kept my flashlight steady and tapped my mic. Unit 12 to dispatch, confirming possible suspect inside theater, proceeding with caution. No reply. I edged past the seats, each one damp where someone had sat. When I reached the front, I saw the projectionist booth's stairs leading up. I took them two at a time. The booth's door hung open. Inside, the projector sat idle, its lamp cold. Beside it, a reel labeled Private Viewing, J, lay unwound. I remembered J from rehab. Rumor had her holed up in private screenings to avoid the press. I snapped a photo of the label with my phone, then noticed the tape recorder on the shelf, its red recording light blinking. I hit play, faint static, then Jay's voice. "Tell him I'm sorry. I did what I had to." I spun toward the auditorium, heart pounding. The empty seats stared back. I heard a shuffle behind me, turned. Nothing but the doorway, framing a narrow corridor lit by exit signs. I holstered my light and radioed, "Supervisor, recorders running." "I'm going in." The corridor curved sharply. The oil trail resumed here, black and slick. I followed its glimmer to a maintenance closet. The door was locked, the padlock hanging open. Inside, cleaning supplies and mops lay discarded. I spotted the oil can, commercial grade, empty. Someone had used it deliberately. As I reached for the can's nozzle on the floor, a soft click behind me, the closet door latching shut. I yanked it, but it stuck. I rammed my shoulder, wood splintering. Finally it gave. I burst out into the hallway and nearly collided with him, the man from the bathroom, soaked, framed in the exit sign's red glow. He looked at me without blinking. "They're leaving," he whispered. "We have to go." He strode past. I grabbed his arm. No resistance. His eyes were hollow. "Who are they?" I asked. He shook his head. "Just go." Then he vanished around the corner. I ran after him, each step echoing, following the oil. At the end of the hall, double doors led outside, to a courtyard drenched in moonlight and mist from the sprinklers. The oil streaked across the threshold, splitting into two paths among the potted ferns. I radioed again. Suspect fled outside, pursuing. I burst into the courtyard, damp grass underfoot, statues of cherubs shrouded in vines. My breath escaped in white puffs. I shone my light along the garden walls, nothing but stillness. Then, behind me, the fountain's pump sputtered to life, water gurgling. I turned to the fountain, its stone basin filled, petals floating on the surface, petals matching the ones I'd seen in the mansion's tub. And among them, a star-shaped pendant, the same as M's, tarnished, half submerged. My radio warped with static. "Unit 12? Status?" I whispered. "Found item, pending." I reached in, fished the pendant free, water dripping through my fingers. The courtyard gates had latched behind me. No exit. The cherub's stone eyes glistened in the flash. I pressed the pendant to my chest and heard a faint chuckle. M's laugh, echoing across the plaza. I spun, light catching on something at the far end, a tall security guard, back turned, rain dripping from his cap. "Hey," I called. He turned, blank face, a flicker in his eyes. He raised a phone, snapping a picture of me. Flash, blinding. When I blinked, he was gone. Gate creaked open. I stepped through, pendant in my pocket, sprinted back inside, locked the gate behind me. I didn't see him again. Backup arrived minutes later, too slow to chase. We swept the grounds, nothing else. I logged the pendant under miscellaneous evidence. The theater tape went to forensics. My report said only what I could prove. Spilled oil, torn padlock, pendant, tape. The rest I left out. When I left the estate, my cruiser's windshield caught a reflection. The mansion's windows all dark, yet somewhere a light flickered, just one. And through the glass, I swore I saw M's silhouette, pale and still, watching me go. I backed out of the courtyard and through the double doors leading to the house's footprint, careful not to slip on wet stone tiles. The pendant burned cold in my palm, its tarnished star catching stray beams of my flashlight. I felt its weight, more than mere metal, like a promise or a warning. Rain sluiced in under the exterior doors, tracing rivulets along the threshold. But I kept moving, flashlight in one hand, pendant in the other. I followed the corridor that led back toward the grand entry hall, but the layout felt off. Walls that had been smooth before now bulged, seams in the wallpaper puckered. It was as though the house had shifted while I wasn't looking. I reached the foyer, a vast, echoing space where the piano still stood sentinel beneath the skylight now open to the sky. The sheet music marked M lay scorched at one corner, as if someone had tried to burn it but stopped halfway. I knelt and flicked a gloved finger across the scorch mark. The paper was still cool. No embers burned. I couldn't tell if this was an intentional clue or just the result of damp meeting ink. I pocketed the sheet music beside the pendant. The rain intensified, drumming on the skylight frame, and I heard a faint scraping above. Metal against glass. I whipped my light upward, saw movement at the roofline. A figure hunched at the opening, robe soaked, hair plastered to its skull. It held something long and slender, sticking out like the neck of a cello. It retreated, vanishing into the attic eaves before I could aim. My throat went dry. I fumbled for the radio. Nothing but static. I cursed under my breath and advanced toward the grand staircase, every step creaking beneath my weight. Halfway up, I heard doors slam shut simultaneously on both sides of the hallway, a heavy boom that reverberated like a gunshot. My flashlight beam sliced through darkness to reveal rooms sealed by wood and lock. Fresh keyholes had appeared, glinting in the rain-splashed light. I tested the first door. Cold steel. The second, silent. Whoever had set them had locked the house behind us. At least the east wing, no sign of keys. Backup must still be outside, locked out. I continued ascending to the second floor. At the top, the hallway shifted direction, angling toward what looked like a balcony overlooking the foyer. I leaned over the railing, catastrophe below. The piano lid lay open, its strings slack. On the marble beneath, footprints pressed into the velvet runner, leading toward the kitchen wing. I noted the pattern, bare prints, toes splayed, dragging behind. Whoever it was had circled to avoid the main rooms. I took a photo of the prints with my phone, time-stamped, and pocketed the device. I followed the footprints down the hallway, feet muffled by the carpet. Doors lined the corridor, bamboo-patterned sliding panels, each slightly ajar. I paused at the first. A den. Leather sofa collapsed in the center, cushions pulled free. On the coffee table, an ashtray brimmed with butts, unfiltered cigarettes I'd never seen anyone smoke. Beneath the ashtray, a post-it. "I can't do this anymore," scrawled in neat handwriting. I lifted it gingerly and tucked it into an evidence bag. A sudden drip echoed behind me. I spun, the wood-paneled walls perspired water, droplets coalescing and falling like tears. I pressed my palm to the paneling. It felt warm. Warm wood beneath cold rain. My pulse quickened. I turned back toward the hallway where the prints continued. Each step grew more distinct, deeper, as though someone had paused to stare at their own feet, then moved on. Ahead, the hall narrowed. A heavy steel door barred the end, emblazoned with the word "Service" in bold letters. I tested the handle, unlocked. I cracked it open, expecting a utility closet, but found a narrow service corridor lit by a single flickering fluorescent tube overhead. The walls here were raw concrete, water-stained. Piping snaked along the ceiling, dripping onto the floor in shallow puddles. The air smelled of mildew and rust. I flicked on my mic. Unit 12 moving through service corridor. No backup. Execute safe approach. I stepped in, boots squelching. The corridor bent left, then right, opening onto a small freight elevator, its doors parted, empty, wires humming above. I shined my light into the shaft. Darkness, then a broken ladder rung on the far wall. No indication whether it went up or down. I wondered if I could call it up, ride it to another floor, but the call box beside it was missing its handset. Someone had stripped the faceplate. No call, no emergency brake. The elevator beeped, as if taunting. I moved on, picking up the prints again moments later, now more faded, as though pressed in haste, then retraced by water. They led to a maintenance catwalk high above, accessible by a rust-spotted staircase. I climbed, every step groaning. At the top, the catwalk spanned the kitchen wing below, copper pots hanging silent, countertops gleaming metal. I saw the source of the sobbing now, in the kitchen center, crouched behind an industrial mixer, M. Her hair was plastered over her face, shoulders shaking. Her gown was sopped, clinging. When she saw me, she tilted her head back, eyes red-rimmed, but before she could speak, a beam of light shot from behind me. I spun. 2 patrol cars had broken through the gate, beams sweeping the roofline. Em scrambled up, stumbling onto the catwalk. I raced to the stairs, trying to help, but she bolted past, disappearing down the corridor ahead, leaving only her footprints in the wet concrete. The catwalk rail rattled behind me, and I realized with dread that the path back had collapsed. A section of grated flooring lay twisted below, as if someone had pulled it apart. No safe return. The patrol cars circled below, sirens drowned by the rain. I radioed Unit 12 to dispatch, subject sighted. East wing compromised, secure perimeter. Static hissed. I peeked over the railing. Officers were converging on the foyer below, but the service corridor entrances were blocked by sliding doors. They couldn't reach me. I had to follow Em or risk being trapped. I retrieved the pendant and sheet music from my pockets. Em's gaze haunted me. She mouthed something, a word I couldn't catch. Then she vanished around a corner. I followed without hesitation. The corridor led to a service hatch that dumped out into the library's back wall. I climbed through, boots skidding on wet bookshelves knocked askew. Titles splashed across the floor. Collected poems, biographies, cookbooks. No clue. I stood in the center of the library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves. Empty chairs overturned. Pages from open tomes scattered like confetti. A single reading lamp flickered on a desk, illuminating a page in a book. A child's drawing crudely taped to the paper. Stick figures standing beneath a star, captioned, "Found me." I felt the pendant thrum in my pocket. I drew it out and held it to the drawing. The star on the pendant matched the one drawn. My reflection appeared in the lamp's glass shade. A tired officer, soaked through, staring at a child's scrawl. Fear and guilt knotted my stomach. I heard footsteps overhead. Em again, running. I slammed the book shut, wiping my hands on my coat, and followed the noise to a back staircase spiraling downward. I descended into a wine cellar. Oak racks half empty, bottles rolling in puddles. The air was thick with damp wood and cork. I could hear Em's sobs down a narrow tunnel carved into the stone. I clicked off my light, letting my ears guide me, and crept toward the sobbing. Each breath echoed, each footstep threatened to slide. Then I saw movement at the tunnel's end. A door cracked, a pale sliver of light beyond. I approached, hand on holster, pendant swinging. Em's voice whispered from inside, "Don't let them take it." A faint clunk sounded as if chains had fallen. My knuckles whitened as I prepared to push the door. Behind me, the sound of the wine cellar trapdoor lifting. I hadn't sealed my path. The beams from the opening cut through the darkness above my head. I looked up to see officers' silhouettes framed in the hatch. Em's figure emerged from the tunnel, clutching something wrapped in cloth. She ran past me, not downward into the tunnel but toward the trapdoor's light, then hesitated. Her eyes locked on mine for a heartbeat, something desperate in her glance. Then she slid backward into blackness, tunnel mouth sealing itself as if devoured by stone. The trapdoor crashed shut. I pounded on it, shouting for help. My breath shook in my chest. Through the wood, I heard the officers' distant shouts fade away. I was alone in the cellar again, the pendant cold in my palm, the child's drawing burned into my mind. I knelt and pressed the pendant to the ground, half expecting it to respond, to glow, to open a path. But it lay dead metal. A single droplet fell from the ceiling, landing on the pendant and sending ripples across the pool of rainwater seeping through the floor. Above me, something moved. An echo of whisper that sounded both like Em and the child from the drawing. Protected. The chamber went silent again, the only sound the drip-drip of water on metal. I rose slowly, heart pounding. The pendant felt impossibly heavy. I hadn't found Em. I hadn't learned what she held. And now I was trapped below, the house's secrets pressing in from all sides, and no way out. My radio crackled once, staticky, distorted. Unit 12? Status? I swallowed hard, voice hoarse. Still here. I need extraction. But I doubted they could hear me. The rain above hammered the trap door, and the echoes of the house settled in, patient and unyielding, as if it knew I would stay forever, searching for answers no one wanted revealed. I waited for what felt like minutes, pressing my back into the cool stone wall of the wine cellar. My flashlight's beam drifted across dust-covered bottles before settling on the trapdoor's scuffed surface. The dull metal held scorch marks where someone had tried to pry it loose. My knuckles throbbed from pounding. I flexed my fingers around the pendant in my palm, its edges worn smooth, the points of its star dulled by time and handling. That star was the key. I was certain of it. But to what? Above, the wood groaned under the weight of boots. I shouted, "I'm here. You have to get me out." The officers' voices murmured beyond the hatch, orders I couldn't catch through the thick oak. Then silence, like the house flicked a switch and cut them off. I felt the walls closing in. Sweat and cold seeped under my collar. I scanned the cellar for another way out. Across the room, behind the racks, I spotted a narrow arched alcove partially hidden by shadows. My stomach clenched. It looked old, original to the estate's foundation. Maybe a ventilation shaft or a crawl space someone had forgotten. I slipped past the racks, boots dripping, and pried at the edge of the alcove's metal grate. It resisted, but with a sharp tug, it gave way. I dropped to my knees and peered inside. Darkness beyond, constricted stone walls. No idea where it went, but every instinct screamed that it was a better option than waiting. I emptied my pockets. Pendant, scorch-streaked sheet music, cell phone, recorder tape. I tucked the pendant inside my shirt, closest to my chest, and draped the sheet music across my flashlight lens, dimming the beam to a sliver of light. I jammed the recorder tape case into my boot for safekeeping. Then I slid into the alcove. My shoulders scraped the walls. My flashlight bent downwards, illuminating slick stone, runnels of rainwater tracing decades of leaks. I inched forward, hands sliding along cold mortar. The opening shrank after 10 feet. I had to stomp one foot, then shimmy forward on my hip. My radio shifted in my pocket, static buzzing when pressed against the stone. I silenced it with a slap. After 20 feet, the alcove opened into a larger cavity, a disused cistern or storage chamber. The air here was warmer, musty, stale. Cobwebs draped the ceiling like silent flags. My light picked out cracks in the vaulted roof, fungi flourishes, peeling paint on iron rings that once held lamps. Ahead, a narrow corridor angled upward toward a faint glow. I followed, chest brushing the low ceiling, each step echoing softly. The corridor curved past a blocked-off doorway patched with concrete. Someone had sealed this long ago. I paused at its edge, pressed my ear. Nothing. Only rain muffled by stone. Good. Nobody chasing me here. I pressed on until the corridor deposited me at the back of what must have once been a servant's wing. I crawled through a collapsed beam onto a dusty floor, strewn with broken crockery. The glow ahead came from a crack under a heavy oak door, 4th floor. In my mind, I counted floors. Entry, 2nd, service, wine cellar below. 4th floor meant attic level. The door had no knob, just a rusted latch. I flicked the sheet music aside and eased the latch open. The door groaned up to reveal walls lined with packing crates, trunks, dust covers draped over furniture like sleeping ghosts. My boots kicked up a swirl of dust motes. Ahead, a narrow window framed by rotten planks let in a slender beam of moonlight. Under the window, someone, M, had etched desperate characters into the sill. Find the child. My breath caught. The worst-case scenario I'd imagined flooded back. The drawing of stick figures beneath a star, the child's note taped in the library, M's words about protecting something. A child, maybe real, hidden somewhere in this house. Whoever called 911 likely found out the truth and panicked. The realization hammered my chest. M hadn't been alone. Someone else was here, someone without a voice on the other end of the line. I pocketed my flashlight and pressed my palm against the sill, peering out. The roofline dipped away to the courtyard. Beyond the gates, patrol cars formed a perimeter, lights rotating in the mist. They couldn't see up here. I closed my eyes against Q, the moonbeam, and felt for the pendant's location. I pulled it out and placed it on the sill, star facing downward. It fit perfectly into a shallow depression carved there, hidden in plain sight. My pulse hammered as I pressed the star into place. It clicked once, a hollow sound that resonated in the rafters. Behind the wall where the crates leaned, a panel slid inward, revealing a narrow shaft spiraling down. Rainwater trickled from its opening. Footsteps approached behind me, soft, cautious. I spun with my hand on my holster, but there was nobody, only trunks stacked high. The footsteps retreated. I thanked God they hadn't come in here. I crouched, balancing my flashlight on a crate to illuminate the shaft below. The spiral descended into darkness. I jammed the pendant back in my pocket and clutched my recorder, whatever it had captured in the theater booth. It might have M's voice. It might tell me who she was protecting. I placed one foot on the first rung of a rusted ladder and started down, every rung squealing protest. Halfway, I paused as a faint whimper echoed up the shaft, like a child's cry. I swallowed. This was it. I climbed on, letting the whimper guide me. The shaft widened into a domed chamber with a single barred iron door. Through the bars, a dim glow seeped. My shins scraped concrete as I dropped to my knees at the door. A small barred window at eye level showed a room lit by a single lantern. Inside, a kid, no older than 6, sat on a cot, knees drawn tight, his eyes wide, spotted with tears. He wore a faded t-shirt with a star insignia, a mirror of the pendant's form. "Hey there," I whispered, lowering my voice. "I'm the police. I'm here to help." The boy stared. His chest rose and fell with tremors. "What's your name, buddy?" No response. I leaned in, pressing a gloved hand to the window. He raised a small hand to it, fingertips cold on the glass. I realized he'd been crying in that lantern's glow, tears still wet on his cheeks. "It's okay," I told him. "I'm going to get you out." Behind him, the cell's walls were scrawled with childish drawings. The stick figures beneath the star, scribbles of houses and trees, and scenes of people running. At the foot of the cot lay a torn Polaroid, rain-smeared, showing the child hugging M. The edges of the photo were singed. My radio crackled to life, static clipping. "Unit 12, respond." I muted it with a flick. Number not out here. I glanced back up the ladder. The house groaned around me, whispering threats. Then the boy tapped on the window. Once, twice. He pointed behind himself at the lantern resting on a wooden crate. The cable ran under the cot toward a breaker box. He mouthed something. "Lights." He pointed. I nodded, understood. Carefully, I pried the crate aside and found the breaker panel. I flipped the switch. The lantern flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the cell. A sob escaped the boy. I clicked my flashlight on, held it to the window. The bars cast shadows like prison stripes across his face. "Stay close," I said. "I'm going to open this door." I rested my shoulder against the cold iron and pressed the release lever on the inside. It clanged. The child's eyes glowed with hope. The door swung inward. I extended my hand, but before he could step forward, the lantern behind us blazed back to life, brighter than before, and illuminated a figure behind the boy. A man, face obscured by shadow, lean frame outlined in moonlight. He wore a security guard's uniform, one of the guards I'd seen outside. His stance calm, almost casual. He lifted a finger to his lips. Shh. My heart seized. The guard held a tranquilizer gun pointed at me. I froze. The boy shrank back, pressing against the wall. The guard's eyes shone with something too familiar, my own. He spoke, voice low. "You have the pendant. You shouldn't have come." The pendant throbbed in my pocket like a dying heartbeat. The guard stepped into the cell, closing the door behind him. The latch clicked. My radio burst with static, drowned by the guard's footstep, a footstep that was mine, echoing in the darkness. The boy whimpered. The lantern's light flickered, throwing the guard's face into relief for a heartbeat. My face. I couldn't move. The pendulum between rescue and nightmare swung as the guard mirrored my stance. Body rigid, eyes hollow. The boy looked from one of me to the other, clutching his t-shirt. The guard raised the tranquilizer gun slowly, and I realized there was no more trace of the house's plan. It was all me. And then, a shot. I felt the dart strike my shoulder before the guard's finger even curled on the trigger. Pain bloomed hot and sharp, then dulled into a slow burn. My flashlight clattered from my hand, skittering across the stone floor and spinning in a widening circle of light until it vanished into darkness. The guard, my double, stood over me, lantern held aloft, face inscrutable in shifting shadows. The boy cowered. Against the wall, eyes huge in the dim glow. I staggered, vision blurring. My uniform sleeve mushroomed with swelling at the injection site. I tried to speak, but my mouth filled with cotton. The guard knelt at my side and placed a gentle hand on my arm. Too gentle for the danger I'd just been in. "You did well," he said softly. His voice trembled as if he too were struggling between roles. "But you have to let him go." My limbs grew leaden. The cavern walls rattled around me. I tried to lift my eyes but could only see the guard's boots and the lantern's pole of light. The boy's face drifted into view, pressed against the bars. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. "Thank you, maybe. Or help me." Black spots danced at my vision's edge. The guard rose, pocketed his tranquilizer gun and stepped backward. He reached out and closed the cell door with a soft click, turning the key in the lock with a deliberate motion. "Go on," he said, voice barely louder than the distant rain. "Find her, then come back, if you can." I sagged against the wall, head slumping. Darkness pooled at my feet. I heard the boy's small footfall recede down the corridor. Then the guard's footsteps ascending the ladder shaft. No triumphant shout, no rush of relief. Only the echo of rubber soles on steel rungs. I tried to move, to call out, but my body refused. The warmth spread through my arm, seeping toward my core. The cellar's shadows curved and twisted, as if alive. The faint drip of water became thunder in my ears. I watched a single droplet fall from a rusted pipe, break, and send ripples across a small puddle at my knee. Then the world tilted. When I came to, I was lying on my back in the foyer. The grand piano's lid snapped shut above me. Moonlight spilled through the skylight, illuminating the scorched edge of the sheet music I'd stashed in my coat. My radio lay beside me, silent. I blinked up, disoriented by the familiar surroundings. The house felt invasive, walls pressing closer than memory. I pushed myself to a seated position, head pounding. My flashlight lay just out of reach, but I spotted the pendant on the piano bench, glowing faintly in the moonlight. I crawled forward, each movement sending jolts of pain through my injected arm. I grasped the pendant, feeling its cool solidity under my palm. Below me, the front door creaked open, and 2 patrol officers spilled inside, weapons drawn but faces anxious. "Lieutenant Donovan?" one called, voice hushed. "We thought we lost you." What happened?" I held up the pendant. "He got away with something," I rasped. My throat felt raw. "The boy, he's gone now. Em, is still here." They rushed to my side. One leveled a flashlight at my arm. "Lieutenant, you've been hit." He dove for medical pouches. The other scanned the entryway, gun smoke and rainwater dripping from his sleeves. "Where's the subject? Where's the child?" I tried to stand, but the world tipped again. I caught the piano's edge. "We need to lock this place down," I whispered. "She's somewhere inside, and I don't know how long until she moves him again." Outside, the gate clicked shut. The rain's drumming intensified. Inside, the whisper returned. Not from any speaker, but from the house itself, as if the walls were sighing. "Protect it, or lose everything." My vision dimmed once more. I felt them leaning over me, murmuring that medics were on the way and that they'd secure the premises. As I drifted out, I saw the pendant on the bench, star gleaming. Beyond it, the foyer stretched into shadow. And just for a heartbeat, I thought I saw Em's silhouette at the top of the staircase, watching quietly, her hand raised in a silent wave. My head throbbed as I came to on the foyer's marble floor. The medics' voices blurred at the edge of my hearing. Urgent, professional, clipped to protocols I barely understood. Rain dripped through the broken skylight, pooling beside the piano. I felt the stretcher beneath me, cold and unforgiving, and resisted the urge to push up. Instead, I drew a ragged breath and reached for the pendant in my breast pocket. It pressed against my chest like a second heart. I closed my fingers around it, grounding myself. They lifted me onto the gurney. The foyer lights flickered, buffeted by the wind. In the hallway behind me, I could hear officers milling, radios crackling. I focused on the pendant, its star point sharp, unmistakable. I'd seen that shape in every corner of this house, scratched into sills, stamped on paper, pressed into mortar. It was the key to the child's safety, and now it was the only clue I still controlled. A medic cut open my uniform, exposing the injection site. I blinked at the ceiling fresco, an expensive mural of cherubs and clouds, now stained by water and neglect. Something in the cherub's expression caught my eye. A smile, too knowing. I had to keep it together. I pressed my good hand to the pendant and forced words past my dried lips. "Find M." The medic froze, syringe halfway to my vein. "Did you say—" Her question died on her tongue when I shook my head, eyes fierce. "She's here, somewhere." They loaded me into the ambulance. The doors slammed. The siren wailed, slicing through the house's hush. As we rolled down the driveway, blue and red lights cutting through the mist, I watched the mansion recede. The east wing windows glowed with a single light. Em's lantern still burning. I knew she had to be moving the boy now, deeper into the estate. They didn't understand. The child was her responsibility, bound by blood or by fear stronger than prison bars. The ambulance skidded to a halt outside the hospital ER doors. I was transferred to a gurney again, wheelchairs and stretchers weaving in the fluorescent corridor. An ER nurse took my vitals. I pointed at the pendant, tracing its outline on my chest with a trembling finger. It's inside that house. Not a key. Something more? They're using it to hide him? She frowned at my uniform, at the aura of desperation. Lieutenant, we can stabilize you, but that house is locked down. SWAT has it. I forced a nod, managing a hoarse whisper. Not enough. Pain lanced through my shoulder. I blinked back tears, anger, and exhaustion all at once. She'll move him again if I stay here. They wheeled me into a private exam room. Monitors beeped. A CT scan was ordered. I took the pendant from my pocket and placed it on the stainless steel counter. Its star glinted under the harsh light. I thought of the boy's wide eyes behind the bars, of M's desperate plea. Protect it, or lose everything. What was I protecting? Not evidence, not a case. Something more fragile, more precious, a child's life, and the promise I'd made the moment I found him alone in that cell. An officer in tactical gear entered, helmet under one arm. He saluted awkwardly. Sir, orders are no further entry until morning. Perimeter breach risk. We've scoured the east wing, no signs of M or the boy. He looked at the pendant. You found that on the piano? I answered between labored breaths. Yes, it's a marker, a guide. We missed it when we toyed with treatment protocols instead of rescue. He hesitated, then nodded. I'll relay. But protocols are protocols. I clenched my fist. Then I'll go back myself. They left me alone. The monitors ticked. I lay back, eyes fixed on the pendant. The room's silence weighed heavy, different from the house's silence, which sang with hidden corridors and shifting walls. Here it was thin, like paper stretched too tight. My mind raced. The service corridor blocked. The shaft collapsed until I reopened it with the star. The hidden cell beneath the wine cellar, the child's drawings, M's footprints. Every thread led back to that pendant and to M's will, her refusal to let anyone touch her secret. Time blurred. The CT door opened and closed. White coats brushed past. Finally, a doctor entered, clipped nurse at her side. Lieutenant Donovan? Her voice was calm but firm. Your scan shows a localized reaction, nothing life-threatening. You need rest, not heroics. I pushed up on one elbow, shoulder screaming. No rest until that child is safe. She studied me, a flash of understanding in her gaze. We can clear you to go back, against orders, if you sign a release, but you won't get far without a team. I glanced at the pendant. I don't need a team, I need a guide. The doctor's lips pressed thin. Then take that. She laid a set of keys on the counter, cell block master keys, used for evidence locker and secured areas. They'll let you pass lockdown, no backup, no company, your call. I pocketed the keys and the pendant. The nurse removed the IV line. I swung my legs off the gurney, ignoring the room's spin. Thank you, I said. No one replied. I made my way to the exit, coat flapping around me, cuffs clinking. Outside, rain had slackened into a steady drizzle. The hospital doors whooshed open. I paused, looked back at the sterile corridors I'd just crawled through. Then I turned, coat collar up, and walked into the night. The cruiser still sat in the lot, lights off. I climbed in, tossed the keys and pendant onto the passenger seat, and caught my reflection in the mirror. A man unraveling in exhaustion, eyes haunted but resolute. I started the engine. The world outside blurred past, streetlights, empty sidewalks, puddles reflecting neon. My phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed. I answered. A whisper, tinny through the line. You're late. No name, no plea, just accusation. Then silence. I slammed the phone down. The pendant's star glowed faintly in the dark. I pulled onto the highway. The mansion's location lay ahead, 10 miles west, its gates ice cold under storm clouds. Protocol said turn back, wait for morning. My gut said I'd already waited too long. I flicked on the highs, rain lashed the windshield, and I pressed the accelerator. Behind me, the city's lights receded. Ahead, the unknown corridors awaited, and the promise I couldn't break. The road curved through low hills, slick with rain, the wipers thumping in time with my breath. I leaned forward, one hand tight on the wheel, the other clasping the pendant against my chest like a lifeline. The city lights behind me faded until only darkness, and that single star's glint guided me. In the rearview mirror, the hospital's neon sign shrank, and the hush of the night swallowed the ambulance siren's echo. My uniform hung heavy and damp. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to steady my mind, replaying the child's wide eyes behind the iron bars, M's frantic plea, and the guard who wore my face as a mask. The mansion's gate appeared before I expected it. Black iron, slick vines, the keypad dark since last night. I killed the headlights and coasted to a stop, engine ticking as it cooled. The world seemed to hold its breath. I climbed out, coat collar turned up, boots sinking into wet gravel. My keys rattled as I unlocked the gate, each click echoing unnaturally loud. It opened without resistance. No drone of security cameras, no guard on patrol. Just the hush of dripping foliage and the gate's slow groan as it swung closed behind me. Inside, the driveway pooled with water. My flashlight beam slashed through the gloom, bounced off the mansion's facade, and caught a single window on the 4th floor, the attic level where I'd found the hidden shaft. A faint glow flickered behind the drapes. M's lantern must still burn, or someone had relit it. I took a breath and moved forward. The front door bled water onto the entry mat. I pushed it open a crack. No latch this time, just a push. The foyer lay empty, silent except for the intermittent drip from the skylight. I crouched and retrieved the sheet music from the piano bench. The scorched corner was still warm to the touch. I tucked it into my coat and stepped inside, boots splashing on marble. The pendant felt like a promise against my ribcage. I whispered into my mic, no answer, so I switched it off. Every reflection in the hallway's mirrors turned my shape into a stranger. I trusted none of them. My flashlight swept right to left. Umbrella stand, armchair, grand staircase. No officers, no medics, just me and the hush. I climbed the steps 2 at a time, each one groaning as though warning me. At the 2nd floor landing, I paused to catch the scent of eucalyptus and antiseptic, now stale and sour. I traced my fingers along the banister rail, slippery with moisture and something else. Salt, maybe, or dried tears. On the landing floor, I found footprints again, bare, muddy, tracking away from the service corridor door. They led along the wall toward a closed panel I'd overlooked. A narrow door, disguised as part of the woodwork, marked only by a small keyhole at eye level. I fished out the master key set and tried the first key. It clicked. I turned it and eased the hidden door open. Inside was a narrow chute, large enough to stand in. A chute that sloped down at a steep angle and ended in darkness. The metal walls were scratched with gouges, as if scraped by those who'd used it in haste. I shone my light down. The chute descended 3 floors, the walls slick with water and grime. At the bottom, a faint glow, brownish and low, lantern light. I backed out, closed the panel, and locked it. My heart hammered. The chute offered a direct route to M and the boy, but also risked collapse or being trapped. I considered retreating, gathering a team, then realized there was no time. She'd move him again whenever she sensed pursuit. I clipped my mic on and spoke into it softly. "Lieutenant Donovan, requesting all available units converge on the east wing service shaft and attic access. Use the master keys for hidden entrances. I clicked transmit. Silence. I cursed. No response. The rain must have drowned out the signal. I slipped back downstairs. Every step deliberate. Foyer to corridor, corridor to service door. At the service hallway, I knelt and picked the lock with a tension wrench and pin, a skill I rarely used but kept honed. The door swung open, revealing the corridor's raw concrete walls. I switched off the flashlight's beam and pressed my back to the cool wall, listening. Nothing but the house's breath. I moved forward in near darkness, using only peripheral vision. The corridor curved left, then right, past the freight elevator. I paused at the elevator shaft's edge. No cage, only open pit, and heard muffled voices far below. My own shaky voice whispered, "Child?" But no reply came. I skirted the pit, flashlight off, guided by memory of the oil trail, the sound of cracked pipes, and the occasional scuff where someone had pressed their palm to the wall. Down I went, following the rubber smell of used elevator belt oil. My coat brushed the walls, water dripped in steady intervals. After an unnerving stretch, the corridor ended at another hidden door, a steel hatch framed with scratches. I hefted the pendant from my pocket and pressed its star into a recessed slot beside the latch. The hatch door buzzed, then unlatched. I caught the click like a starting pistol. I drew my flashlight, squeezed it on low, and eased the hatch open to reveal the wine cellar stairs, the place where the boy had been caged. My breath caught as I crept down, one rung at a time. The kill switch lamp I'd turned off last night lay shattered at the top. The stairs ended in the cellar's domed chamber, now void of the great alcove. Someone had sealed the alcove with fresh cement. My flashlight beam skittered across walls with no alcove, no hatch. I knelt and ran a finger along the mortar. It was still damp. They'd repaired it after my escape. No trace of my tiny tunnel except for the patch's uneven coloration. I exhaled and looked at the pendant, its star glinting. I pressed it against the wall where the alcove had been, to search for another mechanism. My fingers found a minute seam. I pressed. The cement cracked. Behind it, a narrow opening appeared just large enough for my shoulder. I discarded the pendant into my boot, then wedged through. The tunnel was tight, jagged stone, but it led downward a few feet, then swung into a horizontal crevice. I lay on my side and crawled inch by inch, the darkness pressing against my face. My uniform scraped on stone. My wounded arm slid along the floor, pain flaring. After what felt like a lifetime, the crawlspace opened into a larger void, an abandoned service room with shelving and dust-covered crates. My light revealed a single child's drawing taped to a cabinet door. Stick figures, star overhead, scribbles that spelled a single word, safe. Underneath, someone had scrawled in red, now. No sign of M or the boy. My heart plummeted. I searched the crates, mismatched labels, broken locks. Nothing but moth-eaten blankets and torn pillows. A lantern lay on the floor, its glass intact, wick charred but usable. I clicked it on. Its flame flickered to life, casting low shadows. In that flicker, I saw footprints in the dust. Small, barefoot prints leading through a sealed iron door. I turned the handle. It groaned open to reveal a narrow corridor sloping upward. The smell of mildew gave way to the faint tang of eucalyptus. I climbed, each step soured by expectation. At the top, I emerged into a cramped attic alcove, crates and trunks piled high. The wood beams above me arched overhead like a rib cage. In the center, a small door with a sliding bolt faced me. Whispered sobbing came through its cracks. I eased the bolt. The door swung open on creaking hinges to reveal a tiny nursery, blue paint peeling, an empty crib in the corner, and the boy standing at the window back to me looking out over the courtyard. He turned, eyes red and glassy, mouth trembling. Next to the crib, a single toy star lay on the floor. He picked it up and held it out. I crouched and took the star, keeping low so as not to frighten him. "Hey there," I murmured, voice as soft as I could manage. "I'm here. I got your star." He blinked. The lantern light warmed his pale face. I glanced at the sliding bolt. It was unlocked. No trap. That meant M trusted me to come here for him. I hugged the star to my chest and reached for the boy's hand. He stepped forward and placed his small fingers in mine. Relief flared, but I didn't let it blind me. Behind me, the attic door slammed shut. My heart seized. I dropped the boy's hand and turned, flashlight beam snapping up. The beam caught Boots at the threshold. 4 officers in riot gear filled the doorway, weapons leveled. Their leader, Captain Reyes, stepped forward, face grim. "Lieutenant, we've got orders," he said, voice echoing in the confined space. "You're relieved. That child is considered evidence now. You're under suspension pending review." The boy looked to me, confused, then to Reyes. "They'll hurt her," the boy whispered, pointing at the bolt. "She said they would." The weight of protocol crashed against me. I met Reyes's eyes. "That woman, she's trying to protect him. If you take him through official channels, you might as well hand him over to strangers." Reyes hesitated, jaw working. The officers' muzzles wavered between us. The boy clutched the star, eyes pleading. I realized in that heartbeat that every system I'd trusted could turn on him as easily as on M. I closed my eyes, feeling the storm gather in my chest. And then I reached into my pocket for the pendant, pulled it out, and held it aloft between us. Star pointing up, light catching its edges. The attic's rafters creaked. The officers flinched as if the pendant's light had drawn a line they dared not cross. The boy gripped my coat sleeve. Reyes's voice shook. "Donovan, protocol." I pressed the pendant forward. "This is more than protocol." The pendant pulsed once, dimly, and the walls vibrated. Rain drummed above. The officers lowered their weapons, eyes wide with something unspoken. In that hush, the boy took the pendant from my hand and pressed it to his chest. Then he turned and ran through a trapdoor in the floor. A trapdoor none of us had noticed before, into darkness. The officers spun to climb down, but I held up a hand, voice calm but iron. "Let him go," I said. "He knows the way." Reyes took a breath, then nodded. One by one they backed away, leaving just me on the attic floor, staring at the trapdoor's black hole. I sank to my knees and reached for the lantern, lit it, and peered down into the void. A faint glow pulsed below, like the beat of a distant heart. I took a final breath, clipped my mic back on, and whispered to the empty attic, "I'm coming, kid. Hold on." Then I grasped the lantern and lowered myself through the trapdoor into a darkness that felt alive with possibility and peril. Knowing that the final descent would lead me to a reckoning I wasn't sure I could survive. I dropped through the hatch, lantern in hand, into a cylindrical shaft lined with hewn stone. The steps beneath my feet were slick with moss. My boots thumped hollowly as I descended toward the pulsing glow. Damp air pressed in, carrying the distant drip of water and something faintly metallic, like blood-coating iron. My shoulder burned, but adrenaline muffled the pain. Each step took me deeper into the earth beneath the mansion, following the child's silent guide. At the bottom, the shaft spat me out into a cavernous chamber carved from bedrock. The walls here were scarred with claw marks, deep gouges that trailed toward a low tunnel lined with rusted pipes. The lantern's beam danced across the shadows, revealing stacked crates stamped with shipping labels from halfway around the globe. My breath caught when I saw, painted in red across one crate's face, the single word, Mother. Beneath it, someone had scrawled, Safe. I edged forward, feet splashing through ankle-deep water. The passage narrowed until I pressed my shoulder to the rock, lantern held aloft. Then it opened into a final room, a vaulted sanctuary lit by 12 lanterns hung from chains, casting halos on the walls. In the center stood Em, her robe drenched, hair plastered, eyes wild. She knelt beside the crib, splintered and waterlogged, cradling the boy who clung to her like a lifeline. His skin was pale, his clothes soaked, but he squeezed Em's hand with strength that belied his years. They looked up as I stepped in, lantern light flickering against their faces. Em's gaze met mine, a brittle mix of relief and defiance. The boy's eyes, those same wide, frightened eyes, lifted to me, searching. The world contracted to that moment a single heartbeat. I swallowed hard, my voice caught in the pain and the promise. "I'm here," I rasped. "I'm taking you both out." Em's shoulders sagged, tears tracing rivulets through the grime on her cheeks. She pressed the boy into my arms. His weight was light but unbreakable, a living thing of brittle hope and fear. I held him close, feeling his small heart hammer. "Go," Em whispered, voice breaking. "Promise me you'll keep him safe." I nodded, stepping backward toward the tunnel. My lantern swung, illuminating the dozen lanterns' reflections dancing in the puddles. I realized then that those lights outlined a path, 12 steps carved into the floor, each marked with a date. The first read, March 2007, then October 2007, each marking some horror I'd never known. The final step, closest to me, bore today's date. I understood. She had buried the boy here on the day they'd called it a misdial, hiding him within the house's bones. I looked to Em, throat tight. "We're leaving now." Her hands found mine, cold and trembling. She shook her head. "You still don't understand." Her eyes flicked to the last lantern, the brightest of all. "He's bound to this place." Before I could ask what she meant, the lanterns sputtered and died, one after another, until the chamber fell into darkness deeper than the absence of light. The boy whimpered in my arms. I clicked the lantern switch. Nothing. I fumbled for my flashlight, sleeves wet, hands shaking. When I finally snapped it on, its beam carved a circle of white through the black, landing on Em alone in the center, kneeling before the unlit lanterns. She was chanting, soft, broken syllables in a language I didn't know. The boy's grip tightened on my coat. I stepped forward, panic rising. "Come on!" But the tunnel behind me had sealed itself. A wall of stone slid into place, smooth and unyielding. I spun back to Em. She stared at me, tears shimmering. The boy pressed his small face into my chest. I jiggled the tunnel stones, no movement. The 12 lantern hooks rattled, as if stirred by breath. Em rose, face pale in my flashlight. "I tried to save him," she said, voice raw. "But the house will always want him back." She took a trembling step toward the brightest lantern. "He's a part of it now." Thwal, lantern snapped a light, flame surging bright enough to blind me. I blinked, and when my vision cleared, Em and the crib were gone, vanished as if never there. Only the 12 lanterns burned, lining 6 steps descending into darkness I could not see. I dropped to my knees, boy crying quietly. I flicked off my flashlight and held him close, lantern light washing over us. The air was still, ancient. Then, from the depths of the unlit passage, a single voice echoed. M's voice, but distant, warped. "I'm sorry, but it's his only home." I pressed the boy tighter. The floor beneath the lantern shivered like glass. A shadow rose on the far wall, tall, formless, but unmistakably watching. The 12 flames flickered, dimming in unison. My heart thundered. I searched the darkness for any crack or passage. None. Only the hush of stone and the boy's sobs. I whispered into the silence, voice bone dry. "It's okay, I've got you." The lanterns guttered, and the chamber plunged into absolute black. I felt cold metal under my knee, an iron ring in the floor. I reached out, found a key ring attached, my keys, the cell block masters. I yanked them free and pressed them to the closest lantern hook. It fell away, and the lantern clattered to the floor. Suddenly, the shadow in the wall recoiled. The 12 lanterns sparked back to life, casting long beams. In the sudden brightness, the chamber was empty except for me, the boy, and the row of steps leading down. No M, no crib, no whisper. Only the echo of her apology fading into the stones. I stood on the threshold of the steps, the boy cradled under my coat, keys and pendant clutched in my hand. The lanterns pulsed, beckoning me deeper. The house held its breath, waiting. I took one step forward and hesitated. The boy's small face, wet with tears, looked up at me. I straightened, voice trembling. "We're going home." But as I looked back, the passage behind me had vanished. Only darkness and the 12 lanterns remained. I took another step down into the unknown, and behind me, somewhere in the labyrinth of stone, I swear I heard M's distant laughter, or was it a sob, echo through the chamber, asking whether I would ever find my way back. I didn't answer. I remember that night clear as a wet windshield. I was 2 years from retirement, sitting in the cruiser just off Sunset, nursing a cup of bad coffee when dispatch cut in at 11:57 p.m. The log gave it away. Possible hostage situation, no further info. My gut tightened. That neighborhood, massive gates, private guards who ignored sirens, was home to more stars than any precinct should see. I'd been on calls there before. False alarms, errant parties, the occasional domestic spat blown out by tabloids. But this one felt different. Rain had just started, fine needles tapping the roof of the cruiser. I hit the lights and eased through the gate. The guard gave me that tired look, as if to say, "You again?" and waved me through. The mansion sat atop a small hill, its facade dark except for a single living room window, where a blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. No security cameras that I could see. They'd been boarded up for remodeling. The asphalt was slick. I kept my speed low. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, though I knew dispatch was already muted, the channel dead. I pushed open the front door. It swung without resistance. Inside, the foyer was all marble floors and gilt-framed photos. Her face everywhere, smiling in magazine covers and event shots. I called out, "Los Angeles County, anyone here?" My voice echoed, and the silence replied. I stepped forward. In the grand living room, low lamps cast shadows that danced across tall drapes. A piano bench sat open, keys dusted, like someone had left mid-song. On the coffee table, a half-empty wine glass. I reached for it. No fingerprints I could see, and set it aside. A subtle jingling came from upstairs, chains maybe or jewelry. I glanced at the staircase and climbed, each step absorbing my weight, refusing to give more than a soft sigh. Up the hall, the carpet muffled everything but my own breathing. At the end was a door with a small plaque. Recording studio. I hesitated. On any other night I'd have laughed. This place looked more like an art gallery than a studio, but the plaque was there, and behind it I heard muffled voices. I pressed my ear to the door. 2 voices, one low and controlled, the other trembling. I drew my sidearm and cracked the door. Inside, the soundboard lights glowed dimly, cables snaking to microphones that stood like silent sentinels. A tall figure stood by the console, back to me, head bowed. She looked like her, but not, features too gaunt, eyes hollow pools reflecting the red record light. Behind her, a second microphone faced an empty chair. I cleared my throat. "Police, Los Angeles County, ma'am." She didn't turn. The trembling voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come." I flicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom to land on the console, which displayed a file open at Session 23, Final Take. The timer showed 00321. No other tracks were recorded. The red light blinked faster, as if synced to a pulse. "Ma'am," I said again, stepping in. The air was thick, humid, a faint odor, expensive perfume mixed with something sickly sweet. My radio crackled once, dispatch coming back but only static. Then her voice, closer, behind me. "You're too late." I spun. The door slammed shut. My flashlight strobed across the room. Empty chair. I hit the door, locked. My breath pounded. Through the darkness, I saw movement. Curtains shifting though no breeze stirred. I tested the handle. It wouldn't budge. I radioed dispatch. "Need backup. Studio door jammed. Possible inside." The reply was a distant echo of my own words. Then silence. I circled the console, hands brushing over faders and knobs. The headphone jack dangled, empty, on the shelf, a small recorder blinking red. I reached for it. It held a tape labeled Confession. I pressed play. At first, nothing but static, then her voice, barely a whisper. "He said it would end tonight." A click, then the tape rewound itself. The lights flickered. I dropped the recorder. A low thump came from the back hallway. I leveled my flashlight and crept toward it, every nerve alive. The hallway led to a small bedroom. Inside, the moonlight through a curtained window fell on a dressing table, makeup scattered like a crime scene. On the bed, a folded black dress glistening with rain droplets as if worn moments ago. No footprints on the floor, only mine. I heard sobbing behind me, soft, ragged. I turned. At the doorway, she stood. Same gaunt eyes, but her mouth pulled in a half smile. "They always come," she said, voice hollow, "but never leave." Thunder rattled the panes. My radio burst to life one more time, frantic dispatch voices overlapping. Then, as quickly as it came, it died again. She drifted toward me, dress wet, skin pale. "Tell them I'm sorry," she whispered. I raised my weapon, my finger trembled. Suddenly, the storm outside intensified, wind rattling walls, water pooling at the windows. In that roar, her voice echoed, "Do you remember me?" My heart stopped. I recognized the tremor in that word, an old memory buried under years of weariness. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed me, save for the glow of the studio's console blinking once, then gone. I heard the door click open behind me. A soft footstep. I didn't look back. My report later called it an unfounded alarm. No evidence, no missing persons, no sound recordings. Officially, my call never happened. But sometimes when the rain falls at midnight, I swear I can hear her voice over the radio. The cruiser's engine ticked as it cooled, but I left it running. Couldn't bear the silence inside the house. Rain sluiced against the windows, each drop echoing like a warning. I stepped onto the foyer's marble floor, the cold seeping through my boots. The grand chandelier above faintly glimmered, tossing fractured light across portraits of her, smiling, confident, untouched by fear. I remembered those images from magazines, award shows, red carpets. Never once did I imagine her this vulnerable. I dropped my flashlight beam onto the half-open doorway ahead. Beyond was the study, mahogany shelves lined with first editions, awards, framed gold discs. The desk lamp glowed, still on, its shade tilted as though startled. Papers spilled across the surface. Contracts, bank statements, letters. One envelope lay open at the center, its contents gone. I pocketed the envelope, noting the embossed seal. A private rehab clinic she'd checked into 2 weeks earlier. I shut my eyes for a moment, recalling the whispered rumors about her breakdown. The day her publicist released that carefully worded statement, claiming health issues and privacy requests. Now I wondered what real privacy meant when the officers who came here never spoke of it again. Behind me, the front door clicked shut. I spun, hand on my service weapon, breath catching. Nothing but the dim foyer. I radioed dispatch, but the channel stayed dead. Every attempt at a call ended in static silence. I reminded myself to breathe, just protocol, search the house, check for witnesses, gather evidence, report back. But inside, the rules felt hollow. I moved toward the wide staircase, footsteps muted on the plush runner. Above, the hallway stretched, doors lining both sides. The far end opened onto the master suite, where the single light had shone. I hesitated at the threshold. The sheer curtains billowed despite the closed window. A low humming filled the air, like a refrigerator left on in an empty room. My flashlight revealed a corridor rug dampened at the corner, footprints leading into a darkened room. I followed them. The master bedroom was vast. King-sized bed, perfectly made, silky sheets untouched. On the nightstand, a phone lay face down, screen cracked. Next to it, a half-burned candle emitted a faint tobacco scent. The hum grew louder as I approached the window wall. I shone my light upward. A small wall safe was ajar, its door banging softly with each thunderclap. Inside, empty. I glanced at the floor and saw fragments of paper scattered. Notes scribbled in her handwriting. He promised. I trusted him. Now, the rest was illegible, smeared by rain, tracked inside. I scooped them up, pressing them into an evidence bag. A sudden click behind me made me whirl. The bedroom door was closed. I wasn't holding it. My heart thudded. I stepped forward, hand on the door handle, and yanked it open. The hallway beyond was empty, the footprints continuing toward a second stairwell at the end. I followed, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The second flight rose to a narrow landing, lit only by moonlight through a skylight. The hatches to the rooftop lay open, rain dripping onto the polished wood. Steps led to a hatch that gave access to the roof. I heard it creak. I climbed out. The rooftop was slick stone, bordered by ornate railings. Below lay the manicured gardens. Beyond, the city stretched in a grid of lights. I scanned for movement. At the far corner, crouched behind a weather-vane pedestal, was someone. Her. Dressed in that same black coat, hood pulled low. She looked smaller up here, vulnerable, hands clutching her knees. I approached cautiously. Radio on full blast, though I knew dispatch wouldn't answer. "Ma'am, it's Officer..." I stopped short. Her head snapped up, eyes reflecting lamplight from below. Her mouth moved, silent. Then she raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the east wing. I glanced over my shoulder. There, at roof level, beyond a glass conservatory, low lights pulsed. Inside, I thought I saw figures, dark shapes moving among exotic plants. The hum turned into distant voices, muted, urgent. She shook her head, lips parting. "Don't go there. The rain intensified, wind whipping around us. I wanted to retort with protocol, with reason, but something in her eyes cracked me open. Fear, raw and unfiltered. I lowered my weapon. "All right," I said softly. "Tell me what happened." She slid forward, dropping beside me, gaze locked on the conservatory. "They promised safe harbor," she whispered, "but they lied." Then her eyes flicked upward, meeting mine. "They're watching us." A gunshot echoed from the conservatory. Glass shattered. She screamed my name, and instinct, old muscle memory, took over. I vaulted over the railing, gripping the stone edge, dropping behind her into a flower bed. Roses felled by my weight. She landed beside me, breathing hard. Through the broken panes, I saw at least 3 men in suits, faces unreadable in shadow, stepping toward the wrecked glass. My radio crackled to life with static. Another shot, closer. I grabbed her arm. "Down!" We dove toward the skylight hatch and slammed it shut, sealing ourselves in. The conservatory's light glowed orange from inside, like a furnace fed by broken glass and fury. I fumbled my radio. Dispatch answered at last. Words garbled, overlapped, screams and my own voice merging. "Officer needs backup. Armed suspect, possible hostage." The response was frantic, urgent, then dead again. I pressed my palm to the hatch, breathing smoke-thick air. She curled against my side, shivering. "They'll kill us," she whispered. Tell them I'm done running." I gripped her shoulder. "Not yet," I said. "Not while I'm here." The conservatory burst into brighter flame, reflected in her wide eyes. Sirens wailed distantly, too faint to guide us. Above, the rain slackened. Through the cracked glass, I saw them standing like statues. 3 men staring up at the hatch, silent and still despite the roaring fire. One raised a hand, pointing directly at us. His voice reached us, a calm, measured tone that carried clearly through broken glass and wind. "You shouldn't have come." Silence reclaimed the rooftop. The candle of my flashlight trembled. She looked at me, tears mingling with rain on her cheeks. I swallowed hard, aiming my weapon at the hatch. Below, the city's lights blinked, oblivious. I pressed my ear to the hatch. No footsteps, no voices, only the hum of her breathing and the distant crackle of glass. I realized then that we were on our own, just us, the storm, and whatever promise had led her here. And in that moment I understood. I had forgotten how to be afraid, but I wouldn't forget again. The hatch clanged shut behind us, sealing the rooftop in a cage of rain and smoke. I pressed my back against the cold metal, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom to illuminate her face. Ashen, eyes wide like a frightened animal's. The fire's glow pulsed through the cracks around the hatch, staining the rain with orange embers. We were trapped between storm and flame, and I knew that every second counted. I crouched beside her, voice low. "Listen, help's coming." I tried radio again. Static. Nothing. I dropped my hand and met her gaze. "You tell me what happened." She swallowed, shoulders trembling. "I thought they'd protect me," she whispered. "After the tapes, after everything." She trailed off, staring at her knees, slick with rain. The rooftop shivered under a gust of wind, and I leaned closer. "Tapes?" Her head snapped up. "The sessions they recorded," she said, "at the clinic. Everything we said, everything I said, they saved it. They promised confidentiality, professional care, but they sold it to someone who wanted more than therapy." I ran a hand over my stubble, mind racing. "Who?" She hesitated. "I don't know a name. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. They said they'd fix my career, erase the scandal, but they had conditions." A silhouette flickered beyond the glass panels of the conservatory. 3 men stepping back from the wrecked window, hands empty. They watched us, unbroken forms against the fire's reflection. One of them raised a phone, clicking the shutter sound. The flash was blinding through the glass. I heard her gasp, turned, and saw the flashbulb's glow reflect in her eyes. He caught the photo, a souvenir, a threat. I stood, gritting my teeth. They want leverage, that's all this is. I offered my hand. We'll get you out, just follow my lead. She nodded once, as if slapping herself awake. I can't go back in there, she said, voice taut. Not until they're gone. I scanned the rooftop, no other exits. The only way down was that main stairwell, exposed to anyone who'd come up. I pointed at the glass hatch. I'm going over there to draw their attention. You stay here until I signal, then slip to the other side of the stairwell and climb down. Understood? Tears tracked through the rain on her cheeks. I understand. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Trust me. She nodded. I stepped to the hatch and shifted its weight. The flames crackled through the opening, and I poked my flashlight inside. Flickering lights, billowing smoke, low voices. I pushed the hatch fully open, bracing my weight against the railing, and called out, "Hey!" The three men froze. One beckoned, and they advanced toward the hatch, cautious heels clacking on stone. I jammed my elbow into the hatch's edge, wedging it against the frame to keep it open just enough for me to lean out. The firelight hit their suits, turning them ceremonial, unnatural. They didn't speak, just stopped at the edge, faces lit by the blaze behind them. I raised my voice, letting the tension thicken. Get back if you know what's good for you. Police, Los Angeles County. My badge gleamed despite the rain. One of them stepped forward, eyes shadowed. He raised a finger, silent, then pointed at her, still crouched by the hatch. My heart hit my ribs. I owed her more than protocol. I climbed halfway out, footing secure on the ledge, and shouted, "Come out or I'll shoot!" My voice echoed across the rooftop, swallowed by thunder. The man, taller than the others, paused, head tilted. Then he turned and walked away, 3 steady steps toward the conservatory's smoking glass. The other 2 followed without a word. I seized the hatch, slammed it shut, and twisted the lock. Sparks flew from the metal as it clicked. My flashlight carved a path down the stairwell. I shouted through the narrow shaft, "Go, now!" She rose, light on her feet. I heard her slip past, footsteps descending. I waited until the thump of her boots grew distant, then cracked the hatch again and climbed out behind her. The fire's roar was muffled by the hatch. We ducked into the stairwell and sprinted down. 3 flights, then 2, then 1, emerging onto a balcony overlooking the courtyard. No sound except rain. The garden lights flickered as if in greeting. I peered over the railing, guards' huts, cameras turned away, gates still open. I guided her across the balcony, then down the wrought iron stairs. Each step felt heavy, like carrying her fear. We reached the front door, ajar the way I'd left it. I pushed inside and radioed dispatch. Unit 1-8, hostage situation. I have the victim. Suspects armed, retreating to conservatory. Need backup now. My voice was steady but low, exhausted. Static answered. I clenched my jaw. Backup was minutes away if it came at all. Behind us, the foyer's chandelier swayed. She leaned against the wall, draining rain from her coat. "My car's out front," she murmured. "Good," I said. "Lead the way." We stepped into the courtyard. Mist curled around our boots. Through the rain, I saw headlights. 2 cruisers screaming down the drive. Blue lights strobing, cutting rain into sharp edges. She paused, looking at them like they were angels. I covered her as we walked to the lot. My radio jolted to life. Garbled commands, then clear. All units converge on Hollywood Hills address. Suspects armed. Evacuate perimeter. She slipped into her car, a black SUV, engine idling. I approached the driver's side. "Go," I said. She nodded, eyes fixed on me. "Thank you." "Get out of here," I said. She hesitated, hand on the door. Will they find out what happened? I met her gaze, rain washing both our faces. "They will," I said, "but not today." I watched her drive off, taillights dissolving into night. I turned back toward the mansion. My flashlight cut through the darkness. Half a dozen officers stormed the grounds, calling out. I lowered my weapon and raised my hand slightly, officers recognizing a fellow unit. I offered a curt nod, then stepped aside as they fanned out. In the quiet aftermath, thunder rumbled once. I walked back toward the foyer, boots splashing in puddles. Inside, everything looked untouched, like ghosts had passed through. I picked up the half-burned candle from her nightstand, flicked it off. Darkness swallowed the room. I found the envelope I'd stowed in my pocket and taped it shut again. Evidence would be cataloged, reports filed, chains of command executed. But beyond the paperwork, I carried something darker, her whispered words. "They're watching us." I stepped outside under the clearing sky. Rain had stopped, but puddles shimmered in the streetlight's glow. I lit a cigarette, inhaled deeply. Smoke curled around me as I dialed dispatch on my burner phone, secured channel off the record. It rang twice before a voice answered, cautious. "Unit 1-8, I said, voice gravelly. "Confirm, receive." A click. Silence. Then a whisper, unmistakable. "Do you remember me?" My fingers froze on the phone. I stared into the wet street, no one there, just me, the city, and that question hanging in the quiet. And in that moment I realized the breach ran deeper than any forced entry. It was inside us all. Cold light from the storm lamp traced damp rivulets down the walls as I crouched behind the low hedge, watching flames lick the conservatory's shattered panes. My radio remained stubbornly dead. Backup was somewhere in slow-motion traffic. I pressed my back against the slick stone and searched her face, pale, determined, but shaken. We'd made it out, but nothing here was over. I whispered, "Stay low. Follow me." She nodded, eyes locked on mine. I led her across the courtyard, careful to avoid the scorched flower beds where heat still hissed. Rain hissed too, steam rising in small plumes where it met the blaze. The front door stood ajar, a tunnel into darkness. I jammed the butt of my flashlight into the jamb, wedging it open, then slipped inside, motioning her close. The foyer was quiet now, paint bubbling near the ceiling. The chandelier's crystals shattered like frozen raindrops on the marble. I swept the beam down the grand staircase. Empty. I moved toward the butler's pantry, a side entrance I'd spotted on the way in. Cabinets lined one wall, a small service door the other. I cracked it and found the back hall leading to the garage. She followed at my shoulder, breaths shallow, toes damp against linoleum. In the garage, her SUV sat alone under a single bulb, engine still warm. I switched off my light and used the red beam, low profile. She slipped in behind the wheel. I crouched at the passenger door, scanning the dark perimeter. 2 guards leaned against a stone wall, peering up at the fire. Off duty, useless. I considered taking one of their rifles, but knew that noise would draw the men in the conservatory, and by then, we'd be trapped. Instead, I climbed into the driver's seat next to her. Rainwater pooled on the dash. She stared at me, voice barely a whisper. "What now?" I turned the key. The engine roared to life. Headlights pierced the gloom. "We drive until I get a signal," I said. "Then we call it in." I shifted the SUV into reverse and eased out. tires spitting water. The driveway curved sharply, too sharp for speed. I backed slowly, eyes on the guards. One stirred, alarmed, but the other slapped him on the shoulder. We slipped past them, disappearing into the fog. Once on Sunset, I floored it, tires cutting arcs in the slick pavement. She sat rigid, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I glanced at her. "You okay?" She swallowed, voice tight. "I will be." She exhaled, leaning back. "Promise me you'll finish this." I studied her in the mirror, rain-slick hair, eyes still glinting with fear and resolve. "I promise," I said, "but not tonight." We drove in silence, chasing the few bars of cell service. When I finally got through, static, then a whisper of voices, I barked our location and situation. The voice on the other end said, "Units are 5 minutes out. Do not..." Click. Dead air. I turned off the highway into a side street flanked by closed storefronts. We pulled under a blinking neon sign, the rain-drenched pavement reflecting its red glow. "Stay here," I said, and climbed out, holstering my weapon. I jogged a block to a payphone, a relic but on a secure line. I dialed dispatch again, repeated our details, then pressed for confirmation. The dispatcher's relief was audible. Units en route, air support dispatched, perimeter being set. I hung up and jogged back. When I reached the SUV, she was on the phone, face pale. She stubbed it out. "That was my lawyer," she said, voice trembling. "He says, if they pull this public, everything I've done, my career, my reputation, it's over." I leaned in. "You did nothing wrong. They exploited you." She looked away, tears brimming. "But he says the media will twist it." A distant siren wailed. Blue light painted the fog. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let me handle that. You get somewhere safe." She nodded, face resolute now. "My trust fund covers any fallout. I want the truth out." Her jaw hardened. "This ends tomorrow." I climbed back in. "Tomorrow," I agreed. "Tonight we lay low." I started the engine. We rolled into the red and blue glow of arriving cruisers. Officers fanned out, some pointing at the still-smoking mansion, others rushing toward us. I opened my door. "Lieutenant Stewart, it's me. I've got the client and a statement." He nodded, eyes grave. "We'll secure the scene. You and she come to headquarters." As I climbed back in, she glanced at the flashing lights receding behind us, then looked forward. "Thank you," she whispered. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You did the right thing." The SUV slid around a corner, leaving gates, firelight, and guards behind. Headlights caught her face once more, determined, fearful, and oddly free. I exhaled, watching the streetlights blur past. And as the city swallowed us, I heard dispatch crackle in my earpiece. "Officer, do you read me?" That whisper of static and a voice that was half relief, half warning. And beneath it, unmistakable, her own voice. "I'm ready." The station house smelled of stale coffee and paper. No chance to change before security locked us in a back interview room. I closed the door behind us, keeping my badge visible, but my weapon holstered low. She sat on the metal bench, hands folded, eyes forward. The fluorescent lights above flickered. In the corner, a clock ticked loudly. 1:32 a.m. Lieutenant Stewart stepped in, tall and stiff in his pressed uniform. "Officer Martinez," he said without greeting her, "we need your statement." "Detective Lawson's on his way." He handed me a folder. Inside, photos of broken glass, scorch marks, the safe's open door. He looked at her, then me. "Both of you," he said. "Start from the top." I cleared my throat. We arrived on scene just before midnight. I recounted the 911 call, the unresponsive dispatch channel, the locked studio, the the rooftop escape and the conservatory assault. I watched his eyes flick between me and her. When I finished, he asked, "That's it? No mention of suspects inside?" I drew their attention, I said. They retreated to the conservatory. I told her to slip away while I held them off. We ran down the back hall. I tapped the folder. "Evidence is in here," he nodded. He turned to her. "Miss," she inhaled deeply. "Miss Caldwell," she said. I checked into Serenity Cove Clinic 2 weeks ago. They said they'd treat my anxiety and stage fright. But during sessions I said things about private breakdowns, about threats I felt, and they recorded it all. She paused, glancing at me. Then they sold the tapes to a broker. "A broker?" Stewart frowned, like someone who hawks dirt on celebrities. She nodded. "They sold me on anonymity, but once the buyer got my files, they blackmailed me. They told me I'd never record another album unless I did what they said. That's how they set the meeting tonight, under the guise of a secret performance." Her voice cracked. "But it was a trap." Stewart wrote notes. "And the men in suits, the ones on the roof, did they identify themselves?" "No," she said. "They never spoke. They took photos. Just quiet, professional shots, then walked away when I didn't respond." Detective Lawson arrived, a wiry man with sharp eyes. He scanned the room, then closed the door. "Lieutenant," he said, "I'm taking over." Stewart paled but left. Lawson sat down, flipping open a leather notebook. He looked at me. "Officer Martinez, I'll need your full report in writing. Miss Caldwell, same for you. Then you'll both be free to go once we verify your statements." She looked at me, eyes wide. I nodded. "Understood." As Lawson began, I noticed something behind him. A small wall safe recessed into the concrete. Its door was closed, latch in place. I frowned. That safe wasn't here before. Lawson spoke. "Based on forensics, the conservatory fire was set intentionally. Accelerants found. We suspect an inside job at the clinic. Our task force is on it." He looked at her. "We'll protect you." Before she could respond, he flipped the page. "Now, exactly what was in that envelope you found?" Her face tightened. "Records, financials, payment ledgers, proof the clinic funneled money through shell companies. They wanted to launder funds and build blackmail material." She swallowed. I brought the envelope with me. She reached into her coat and laid it on the table. Lawson glanced at the seal. "Serenity Cove," he murmured. "I've heard rumors." He opened the envelope carefully, removed several pages. "This'll give us a lead." He tucked them away. "Thank you, Miss Caldwell. We'll be in touch." He rose, nodded to me, and left, closing the door softly. We sat in silence. The clock ticked. 1:49 a.m. The fluorescent lights hummed on. She looked at me. "Will they really protect me?" I studied her. Pale face, eyes red-rimmed, hands shaking slightly on the bench. "They have to," I said. "We've got evidence now. Motel security cams, phone records, witnesses to the convoy." I lifted my badge. "My word's behind you." She exhaled slowly. "I didn't want to drag you into this," she said. "I told you I was done running." I offered a small, tired smile. "You're safer here than out there. They'll bolt that clinic shut by dawn." I glanced at the clock. 1:53. Let's hope so. The door clicked. Lawson's head popped in. "Officer Martinez," he began, then paused. "We found something." He held up a smartphone. The screen showed a grainy video, the hallway outside our interview room. 2 figures in dark coats, faces obscured, pacing. One raised a phone and filmed the closed door. Then they walked away, disappearing down the corridor. Lawson exhaled. Looks like someone's been recording us. He handed me the phone. Recognize them? I stared. The coats looked expensive. Designer cuts. The gait, the shoulder line. It reminded me of the men on the roof. I felt a cold twist in my gut. I handed the phone back. No, I said, but my voice was uncertain. But they're connected. He nodded grimly. We're locking down the floor. No one leaves. He closed the door. The fluorescent lights flickered again. The clock ticked. 1:57 a.m. She leaned closer. They're watching us, every move. Her voice was barely a whisper. They'll know what we said here. I felt the weight of her words. We were inside what should have been a secure precinct, imparting secrets. If the blackmailers had the tapes, the clinic contacts, and now recordings of our debrief, what was left private? I pressed my palm against the cool metal bench. The overhead speaker crackled to life. All units, lock down interior corridors. Identify and detain unauthorized personnel. Lawson strode back in. We've got SWAT teams on every entrance, he said. We'll sweep the building. He looked at her. Miss Caldwell, you'll be escorted to a safe house once we clear this floor. She nodded, face pale but resolute. Thank you. Lawson paused at the door. He turned to me. Officer Martinez, keep an eye on her. No more surprises. He left. The click sounded louder now. In the hush, I realized we were both sitting under surveillance, trapped by protocol and by those who wanted to silence us. I looked at her. They always watch, but we've got one thing they don't. She met my gaze. What's that? I leaned in, voice low. We know who they are. She blinked. How? I tapped my temple. And now they know we know. I stood, offering my hand to help her up. Time to move. She took it, rising slowly. The clock on the wall ticked again. 1:59 a.m. Down the hall, distant footsteps echoed. Boots, slow and deliberate. We headed for the exit. As we passed the safe, its door swung open. Empty again, but for a single sheet of paper taped inside. My badge number and her name, spelled out in neat block letters. I stopped cold. She looked at me. What's that? I swallowed. A reminder, I said. They're closer than we thought. A soft click. The door ahead opened, and a squad of uniformed officers filled the frame, rifles at the ready. Their leader barked, "Freeze!" I raised my hands, heart pounding. She froze beside me, eyes wide. The hallway lights flickered, and as the officers stepped forward, I realized there would be no more safe rooms, no more interviews, only the truth we carried, and the watchers who would stop at nothing to keep it buried. And in that instant, I knew we were already too late. The interview room door sealed behind us with a soft click. In its tight confines, the stale smell of machine-pressed coffee and damp rain gear pressed in. I watched her straighten, shoulders stiff, eyes drifting to the single fluorescent bulb overhead, flickering like a dying pulse. Outside, the precinct corridor lay silent, but we both knew it was rigged with eyes and ears. Somewhere in that building, someone was feeding every word we spoke to unseen watchers. I cleared my throat. Let's finish this. My badge sat heavy against my chest, a promise and a target. I led her from the metal bench to the small table under the light, the scene set for confessions and charges. Detective Lawson hovered outside the windowed wall, clipboard ready. Lieutenant Stewart stood by the door, jaw tight. Both waited for our final testimony. I spoke first, voice low. When they recorded us here, they weren't just gathering dirt, they were mapping our every reaction, tone, pauses, word choice. They built profiles on us. I laid a taped envelope on the table, proof of the shell companies and offshore accounts. This is the payoff trail, but they left breadcrumbs here. I tapped the envelope. Inside, the lead investigator's contact info at Serenity Cove. She inhaled, picking up the threads. And the tape they made of us, me, you, they'll use it on the media or the board. If it goes public, they'll paint me unstable, you complicit. Her voice cracked. They showed me snippets. My own fear turned against me. I nodded, but they slipped. That video someone took outside this room. They underestimated our reach. I showed them the phone screen. 2 figures pacing in the hall, filming through the glass. They thought no one would notice, but we did. Lawson frowned. We've identified the clinic's COO. He's tied to a shell in the Caymans. We got a warrant. Stewart's lips thinned. We'll raid Serenity Cove at dawn. He glanced at her. You'll have protection. She closed her eyes, relief and dread warring. What about my reputation? I leaned forward, voice steady. Time flips reputations. Today, they're victims. Tomorrow, they're exposed. I fixed my gaze on her. You have the proof. They can't hide in shadows when we bring the light. She uncurled her hands from her lap. I want them prosecuted. Publicly. Her tone hardened. Every board member, every silent investor. Stewart nodded. We'll hand over everything to the DA. They won't touch this unless the press is watching. He looked at Lawson, then back to us. Are you ready? She exhaled like she'd held her breath for years. I am. The clock on the wall ticked. 2:07 a.m. The last chance. Confessions locked. Evidence secured. Beyond these walls, men in suits and cameras waited. But inside, we held the only truth that mattered. I stood and extended my hand to her. Come on. She rose, clasped it, and we walked out together. Down the corridor, the shape of security cameras on the ceiling watched our every step. Officers in the hall stopped, stared. No nods of permission here, only suspicion. I locked eyes with each as we passed, partners in a quiet war. At the elevator, Lawson ushered us inside. The doors closed on our reflection. 2 silhouettes, 1 badge, 1 celebrity. He pressed the lobby button. Silence. When the doors opened, the station's main floor sprawled before us. Desks, phones ringing, officers moving in rehearsed patterns. Then I saw them. 2 men in dark overcoats, standing by a side exit, their faces hidden under low hats. They didn't move, just watched. I felt her stiffen beside me. I tapped her arm. There they are. She swallowed. They followed us. I stepped forward. Officer, I called to a nearby uniform. Those 2, by the exit. Detain them. The officer nodded and moved in. The men turned slowly, faces coming into view, pale, composed, their eyes cold as marble. The officer hesitated, then reached for his radio. One of the men raised a slender hand, no gun, no threat, just a gesture. But in that gesture was command. The officer stepped back. I drew my weapon. Don't move. My voice echoed off the walls. The station went still, every eye on us. The taller man removed his hat. He had her eyes, the same gaunt, hollow look, though older, hardened. His lips curled in a faint, knowing smile. He nodded once at her, then to me. You've done well, he said, voice smooth, an echo of her own whisper on the roof. My finger twitched on the trigger. Who are you? He held up a single sheet of paper, my badge number, her name, case file numbers, and beneath it a simple message. Thank you for your cooperation. He dropped the paper at my feet and stepped back. His companion followed. Then they walked away, merging into the crowd, vanishing down the hall as if they'd never been there. The station erupted. Shouts, running feet, radios crackling. Lawson lunged, but I held up a hand. I bent to retrieve the paper. The words seemed to burn into the page. She watched me, face pale. I met her gaze. They knew we'd do this. My voice was quiet but carried across the chaos. They planned every step, including letting us think we won. She exhaled, tears glinting. So what now? I stood, paper in hand. Outside, dawn's gray light seeped through the windows. Now, I said, voice hoarse, we go public. I turned to Lawson and Stewart. Lock every exit, notify press, we're exposing this from the top. As they sprang into action, I showed her the note again. Her hand trembled as she touched the words. I laid a hand on her shoulder. They gave us this, so we'd know it's their game. Now we play ours. She nodded, resolve returning. Let's finish it. I stepped aside, watching her move toward the station's public entrance, ready to face cameras, reporters, the weight of her own truth. I followed, badge out, weapon holstered, heart pounding. And as we emerged into the gray morning, the sun breaking through cloud, I heard it. Her voice, barely more than a breath, carried in the hush. Do you remember me? I paused, turning back to the darkened precinct, a fortress of secrets we'd just shattered. I saw the men in coats at the side exit, standing like sentinels in the dim light. They raised their hats once more, a final salute. Then they disappeared. I looked at her. I remember. She nodded and squared her shoulders. Reporters' flashes lit the parking lot. We stepped into the glare, together, officer and survivor, into a world about to learn what had happened behind closed doors. The cameras in the corridor blinked into life as we stepped into the station foyer. Dozens of them trained on every inch of polished tile. I dropped the folded paper onto the desk by the front door. Its edges were damp from my grip, the ink smudged in places, but the message was clear. They'd orchestrated the entire rescue, the entire investigation, to draw us out. Now, the station itself was the stage. She stood beside me, breath steady, although her eyes flickered with what I could only call defiance. Reporters crowded behind the glass doors, microphones thrust through the gaps, cameras trained on her. I braced myself on the desk, fingers wrapped around the edge, and watched. Lieutenant Stewart appeared at my elbow, tenser than I'd ever seen him. Detective Lawson hovered behind, clenching his notebook like a shield. "They're live in 3, Stewart said, voice low. "You ready?" She exhaled, lips pressed together. Then, in a single motion, she squared her shoulders and stepped forward. I followed. The glass doors slid open with a hiss. Noon sunlight streamed in, turned the foyer into a glare of white. Flashbulbs popped. Shouts of questions filled the air. "Miss Caldwell, is it true you were blackmailed?" "Officer Martinez, how involved were you?" "Who are the men in suits?" She met them all with calm clarity. I stood beside her, badge clipped to my chest, one hand resting on the firearm in its holster, not to draw, but as a reminder of Jack Bauer-style stakes we weren't allowed to dramatize. A TV reporter pushed a mic forward. I cleared my throat, stepped up next to her. In a tone clipped but unwavering, I said, "We have evidence of a criminal conspiracy at Serenity Cove Clinic. We're submitting it to the district attorney today. Any attempts at intimidation or further surveillance will be met with prosecution." The crowd pressed closer. The flashbulbs intensified. She raised her voice, soft but clear. "They recorded my therapy sessions, sold them for profit and leverage. They threatened my career and safety, and they breached this precinct, our sanctuary, to watch and record us. We will no longer be the ones under surveillance." I felt her pain in each word, each carefully chosen pause. A void opened beneath the station's chandeliers, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Then cameras whirred, voices echoed, but she did not flinch. We turned and walked down the steps of the precinct, each footstep measured. Officers opened a path, their eyes wary but resolute. Outside, more reporters, city officials, allies I didn't know we had. A sea of faces, some supportive, some neutral, many hungry for the next twist. She paused at a parked cruiser, headlights off but engine idling. I joined her. In the rearview mirror, I saw the side exit where those two men had stood, vanished. I listened, only the echo of my own pulse. A news ticker on a nearby broadcast truck scrolled. Celebrity breaks silence on shocking blackmail scandal. Police to press charges against clinic. The words felt surreal. She looked at me, rain from an earlier shower still beading on her coat. "This is only the beginning," she said. I nodded. "They'll retaliate. Lawsuits, smears, whatever they can conjure." I met her gaze in the mirror. But now we have the upper hand. As we climbed into the cruiser, I heard the faintest whisper. 2 words carried on a breeze that rustled through the station's open plaza. "Do you remember?" My hand tightened on the wheel. I glanced at her. She stared ahead, unblinking. I realized then that the question wasn't about the past. It was an omen for what lay ahead. I turned the key. The engine rumbled, and we pulled away from the precinct, cameras and crowds fading in the rearview mirror. The city stretched before us, a labyrinth of streets, secrets, and shadows. And as we drove toward whatever came next, that question echoed through my mind, unanswerable and insistent. "Do you remember me?" I was parked in front of the station paging through old case files when dispatch crackled over the speaker. "Unit 12, 911, hang up at 2848 Vista Del Mar. Caller ID from Santa Monica Guard Post." I recognized the number before the guard even spoke. It was the post outside the estate known as The Crest, owned by someone they called Jay, a music producer turned actor nobody ever named in the press. 30 seconds of open line, then silence. The guard swore he heard something. Footsteps, a door slam, and what he thought was Jay's voice calling, "Help me," before the line went dead. I grabbed my jacket and slipped into my cruiser. Rain was coming down in sheets, tapping a slow rhythm on the windshield. The fog, rolling in from the ocean, blurred the streetlights into smeared halos. I punched the gate code into the intercom and watched the barrier lift with a hiss. No patrol lights, no security SUV waiting. Just the hush of night and the scent of salt on the air. The driveway curved like a question mark up the hill. Tire tracks glistened, already filling with new water. I cut the engine and listened. A dog barked somewhere behind the house. Sharp, panicked, then quiet. I clicked on my flashlight and moved toward the front door. The porch light was off. The only glow came from a living room lamp far inside. Through plate glass windows I saw empty rooms, white walls, modern furniture submerged in darkness. I knocked. Soft raps. "Police," I said, low voice. "Los Angeles County. Is anyone there?" No answer. I tried the door. It opened with a smooth click. They weren't kidding about the private security. I stepped in. The entry hall smelled like fresh paint and expensive wood polish. The floors were glossy enough to see my reflection. I swept the flashlight beam across abstract art on the walls. Fractured faces, sharp angles, empty frames waiting for the next exhibit. The silence pressed around me. I spoke into my radio, Unit 12 to dispatch. On scene, no movement at entry. Static answered. I moved through the living area toward the stairs. At the base, there was a single footprint in the dust, large boot tread. I froze, stared at it. Whoever made it came after the house was cleaned for a showing, but before the rain. I bent, traced the pattern with a finger. Military-style sole, unusual for a studio-type security force. Above me, a door creaked. Not the front windows or a door swinging in the breeze. This was internal. I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. At the landing, the hallway stretched away in low lamplight. 15 feet down the hall, the master suite door was cracked. Light spilled out. Warm, yellow, smoke alarm batteries. A lamp left on? I approached, hand on holster, every nerve alive. Inside, the suite was immaculate. A king-size bed with crisp sheets, bedside tables symmetrical. On one, a vintage receiver radio sat snarled in cables. It was on, playing static under its breath. I clicked it off. Quiet returned. On the other table lay a single Polaroid, face down. I flipped it. The image was washed in blue tones. A hallway, a woman's silhouette at the far end, arms raised as if balanced on narrow walls. I shone my light on it. The woman was Jay, her hair long and dark, but her posture stiff, unnatural. I felt a prickle at my neck. Behind me, the closet door stood slightly ajar. I spun, nothing there but empty hangers swaying, as if something brushed past. I took a breath and stepped in, light sweeping. Closet rods and shelving, no sign of disturbance. I backed out. Something clicked behind the nightstand. I circled to the other side and found a hidden latch. The nightstand slid aside, revealing a small alcove carved into the wall. Inside lay a phone, cord cut, and a recorder. I lifted the recorder, it clicked on. A man's voice crackled. "They're watching. I can't." Then static, then a woman sobbing quietly. "Please." The tape stopped. My radio burst to life, dispatch cutting through. "Unit 12, we've got another hang-up at 1724 Ocean View. You available?" I pressed the PTT. "Copy that. Dispatch, Unit 12, isn't clear here." I swallowed. My voice sounded brittle. "I need backup. Section 5, nothing." The line was dead. My hand shook as I turned off the recorder. I slid it into my jacket pocket. The portrait of Jay's silhouette haunted the Polaroid in my other hand. I tucked that away too. Footsteps pounded down the stairs. Solid, determined, coming closer. Not mine. Security arriving. Unlikely. They'd have sent lights. I ducked back, heart pounding. The hallway light flickered, then went out, plunging me into darkness broken only by streetlight filtering through the blinds. I jammed my hand into my pocket for the recorder, thumb hitting the power switch to see if I could get tape to roll again. But no, the display was off. Dead. I clicked the flashlight. Beam splintered across the floor, and heard the sigh of breath behind me. Software human. I whispered, "Someone there?" No answer, but I felt the weight of presence just inches away. Then the intercom crackled in my ear. "Proceed to Ocean View." All units. That wasn't dispatch. The voice was clipped, cold, like metal through speakers. I froze, dread unfurling in my chest. I know every frequency in the car. None carry that code. I turned, light trembling across the wood-paneled walls. The door at the end of the hall was gone, replaced by a black void. I blinked. When I looked again, the door was back, closed. I advanced, every step measured. At the door, I listened. Silence, except for a faint echo, maybe my own breath, maybe something deeper. I slid my fingers into the crack and pushed. The door opened smoothly into an empty guest room. No light, no furniture, just 4 bare walls and a window with curtains drawn tight. The air was colder here, like a refrigerator door left open. I heard it then, a whisper under the floorboards, so low I almost missed it. A voice I recognized from old broadcasts, soft, pulsing. "You should not be here." My flashlight flickered and went out. Pitch, My heartbeat thundered. I whirled, groping for the door, chest tight. Rain began to drum on the roof above me. Faster now, urgent. And as I fumbled for my radio, I realized I was alone, deep inside a house that should have been empty, hearing voices from empty rooms, and I had nowhere to run. I'll never forget that whisper. It followed me down the stairs, through the foyer, and out past the gate at dawn. I handed in my report. Misdial, unfounded. No one unseen. They closed the file 2 weeks later. But I know what I heard. I know what they buried. We got another call, a crackle on the line before the number blinked out. I woke that morning to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Unit 12, 911 hang-up at 2172 Montague Lane. Caller ID, same Santa Monica guard post. I sat up, chest tight, heartbeat still echoing from the night before. Dawn was breaking, but the sky was the color of dirty dishwater, cloudy, bruised purple. I'd barely closed my eyes. By the time I rolled into the lot, I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a growing knot of dread behind my sternum. The station was quiet, save for Flores at dispatch rubbing his eyes and muttering about the flood of midnight hang-ups. He slid me the slip. Same drill. No activity on cameras. Security says they heard whispering over the streamers. I nodded, grabbed my coat, and walked to the car without pressing my lips together. Couldn't muster the words. Montague Lane curves along the hillside, houses set back behind walls thick with ivy. I hit the gate code and eased through. The road was wet, slick with last night's drizzle. I killed the lights halfway up, then coasted to a stop under the main porch lamp. It was off, so were all the others. Inside, the guards were supposed to trigger lights if anything unusual happened, but nothing had. I approached the door, flashlight off, listening. Old Hollywood bungalow, arched entryway, hardwood floors, mid-century furnishings. I knocked firmly. Los Angeles County, my voice trailed in the half-empty foyer. I flicked on the light. The living room was dark, the couch covered with a throw. A side table lamp glowed faintly. I stepped in, heels clicking. Dispatch, Unit 12. Front doors unlocked, no motion inside. Silence answered. I swept the beam across framed vinyl covers lining the walls. Platinum records, gold discs, photos of Jay with faceless executives. I tracked the dust on the grooves. No one had touched them in days. I moved through the corridor toward the back of the house, toward Jay's private studio, where the guard claimed the last odd noises had come from. The studio door was ajar. Inside, the console sat dark. Microphones dangling from stands like silent sentinels. A single monitor glowed with a frozen waveform. I tapped it. No response. On the mixing desk, a nearly empty bottle of scotch, one glass half filled. I traced the rim with a fingertip. The glass was warm. Someone had been here recently. Behind me, the intercom buzzed. Unit 12, clear to respond to Ocean View. That voice again, not Flores, not dispatch, metallic, deadpan. I nearly dropped the flashlight. I spun toward the hallway, heart in my throat. No one there. I swallowed and forced myself to keep moving. The studio door swung shut behind me. My breath caught. I wrenched it open, flashlight beam jagged across the room. Empty. I stepped out and followed the hallway to the master suite. My legs felt like lead, every step measured. Outside the bedroom door, I heard it. A low hum, like a guitar string vibrating against bone. I pressed my ear to the wood. No amps on, no power flowing. Just that note, droning. I kicked the door open. The room was minimal. Low platform bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The hum was louder here, resonant in my chest. On the dresser, half a dozen Polaroids fanned out. Night shots of the house, exterior angles, security cam stills, grainy images of empty hallways. But the last photo was different. It showed a narrow hallway, one I hadn't walked down, lined with closed doors. At the far end, a figure stood facing away, silhouette barely visible. I leaned closer. The reflection in the photo's glare caught my eye. My own face, pale, sweat beading on my brow. My radio crackled. Unit 12, status. Flora's voice, familiar, panicked. You busy or something's here, I said. Voice low. Not who I'm calling. He was silent. Then, backup's on its way. ETA 5 minutes. I exhaled, tried to steady. Copy, I said. I dropped the Polaroid into my jacket pocket. I turned back toward the window. The city lights were dim, swallowed by fog. Then I saw movement. Across the yard, a window on the second floor flickered. For a moment, it was lit, then dark. I cursed under my breath. He's here, I whispered. Or they are. I left the suite and retraced my steps to the hallway. The hum was gone, replaced by piano. A single note, clear as a bell. It came from below. The house had no piano. Music drifted upward. I crept down the stairs 2 at a time, flashlight beam dancing along the railing. In the foyer, the grand staircase had no landing piano, but the carpeted hallway beyond led to the guest wing, where the guard claimed to have heard whispers last time. I followed the tune, a solitary middle C echoing off marble walls that shouldn't exist in this house. I stopped at the guest hallway, heart slamming. The door at the end stood open. Yellow light spilled out. I edged closer. The music paused. A silence so thick I heard my own blood pulsing in my ears. Then soft footsteps passed behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I felt the air shift as someone moved past, brushing my shoulder. My hand twitched at my holster. I forced myself to look forward and stepped into the room. Bare walls, hardwood floor. In the center, a music stand held sheet music for an old jazz standard. No instrument, no chair. The single bulb overhead flickered, casting jittery shadows. I flicked the stand to steady it. On the sheet, someone had written in ballpoint, "You hear me." I swallowed so hard my jaw cracked. I turned to go, but froze. In the mirror on the far wall, a figure stood behind me, barely more than a shape. I didn't see a face, just the curve of shoulders, the tilt of a head. I held my breath, warned it. My voice caught. "Who's there?" No answer. Then the recorder in my jacket buzzed, tape loop engaged. I yanked it out. The tape spooled, scratchy breathing, my own voice from earlier repeating back, warped. "Please, you should not be here." I dropped to my knees and yanked the tape free. It unraveled, floating to the floor like black ribbon. The music stand clattered behind me. I spun, light slashing across empty space. The figure was gone. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. I roared, "Police!" But my flashlight died at the same moment the door slammed shut. I was blind. The door handle rattled. I dropped to elbows, fumbled for the knob. It wouldn't turn. Panic clawed at me. The footsteps neared. 1, 2, 3, and then a whisper from the other side of the door. "You hear me?" Not from speakers, inside the wall. My radio cracked. "Unit 12, come in." "Is that you?" Floris's voice, relief mixing with fear. "Where are you?" I hit the PTT. "Guest wing, doors stuck." "Hang on, breach team's 5 seconds out." The lock clicked. The door burst open. Light flooded in. I stumbled into the hallway as 2 uniformed officers swept past, rifles raised, shouting commands. I collapsed against the wall, breath shuddering. They scanned the room. "Clear," one shouted. He looked at me like I was the anomaly. I handed him the recorder. "Play this," I rasped. They clicked it on. The tape whined, familiar static, then a soft sobbing, then my own voice pleading, "Don't leave me." The officers exchanged looks, confusion and concern. No one else had logged a tape in the system. No one had marked it missing. And there was no one left inside to explain why the recorder had my badge number scratched into it, or why every photo in the studio was now blank. Faces erased by some unseen hand. They escorted me down the hallway, past the silent windows, past the echo of drifting piano notes. Outside, rain had picked back up, pounding against car roofs. I climbed into the cruiser, recorder on the seat beside me. I punched the siren. Lights cut through the fog as I drove away. Brake lights faded behind me, swallowed by the mist. That night, I filed my report at Montague Lane, unfounded call, no suspects, no evidence. I requested counseling. They assigned a partner to ride along, keep me talking. But the recorder, they archived it, sealed it, and I've never heard its audio again. Still, when I close my eyes, I hear that piano note, and the whisper pressed against my ear. "You hear me." We got another call, late this time, just past midnight, when the city settles into its secret rhythms. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unit 12, hang up at 3304 Pacific Promenade. Caller ID, Santa Monica Guard Post. I felt a familiar tug in my gut, the thrum of dread. By now, I'd learned not to trust these misdials. I slid my coat on, chest tight, and headed out. The drive was quiet. No sirens, just me and the hum of the engine. Headlights carved through fog, rolling in from the ocean. The promenade is lined with multi-million-dollar glass towers, balconies overlooking the waves. At this hour, they're skeletal silhouettes against a pale moon. I entered the code, the barrier lifted, and I coasted down the driveway until I parked under the dim glow of a single lamp. I killed the engine, knelt on the pavement and listened. Ocean waves thrummed in the distance, mingled with the faint hiss of my breath. No footsteps, no dogs. I clicked on my flashlight and approached the entrance. Door was unlocked. Someone wanted me inside. I stepped into a long foyer with polished stone floors that cooled my boots. The echo of my footsteps chased me forward. Abstract sculptures perched on pedestals, their shadows flickering in my light. I stopped at the floor-to-ceiling windows, curtains drawn tight, shaping darkness. If someone was in here, they'd have to be silent. I called out, voice low, "Los Angeles County, please respond." Silence. My radio crackled with static, then Flores's voice, "You okay, 12? "Hold on," I whispered. "I'm inside." I moved through a hallway toward the den. The guard had mentioned hearing keys clinking, the shuffle of feet, but no lights. In the den, a fireplace sat cold and unlit. On the mantel framed photographs, Jay at award shows, side by side with another Polaroid I'd never seen. Her and a man whose face was darkened by shadow. I flicked my beam over it. The man wore a crisp suit and a fedora. Jay smiled, unaware of the dark shape behind her. The intercom crackled, metallic, insistent. "Check the balcony." Not dispatch, the guard's voice maybe, but the tone was wrong, flat, almost amused. I edged toward the sliding doors. They were unlocked. I pulled them aside and stepped onto a narrow balcony that jutted over a drop to a garden below. The ocean breeze hit me, bracing, salty. Beneath the rail, sandstone planters held wilted palms. A glass of whiskey balanced on the railing, half full, beads of condensation running down its side. No fingerprints, but mine and the guard's code. Cold. I turned back inside, and the doors slammed shut on their own. I yanked at them, locked. My flashlight beam caught movement. A smear of wet footprints across the tile floor, leading into the hall. They weren't boot prints. Barefoot. Adult, toes splayed. Someone had walked through without shoes. I followed them, heart pounding, into the guest corridor. The walls here were lined with recessed art lights. Beneath one, a painting of breaking waves, sunlight on foam. Now the painting was crooked, tilted 8 degrees to the left. I straightened it. Behind the frame, a small safe embedded in the wall. Code panel open, its blank screen glowing faintly. No numbers entered. My radio sputtered. Backup ETA 3 minutes. Floris's voice tight. I exhaled, forced calm. Copy. I heard a whisper, so faint I thought it was my own thoughts. Find me. A child's voice? An adult's? I couldn't place it. I spun, beam across empty hallway. The whisper faded into the hum of the ventilation. Ahead, the corridor ended at a staircase leading down. The guard hadn't mentioned the lower level. This house had a basement they rarely used. I hesitated, hand on holster, then descended. 2 flights down, the air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. At the bottom, a door stood ajar, warm light pooling around its edges. I pushed it fully open and stepped into a wine cellar. Rows of bottles, racks carved into stone walls. In the center, a tasting table held 2 flameless candles that flickered like real flames. Around the table were 3 empty chairs pulled back, as if their occupants had just risen. I circled the table. No footprints on the dusty floor, no spilled wine, no glasses. Everything too neat. Then the room went dark, the candlelight cut out. My flashlight flickered on its own, beam bouncing across bottles. I saw movement in the glass. A figure reflected, standing behind me. I whirled. Nothing but rows of wine. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. I dropped to my knees, checked my recorder. Dead. Tape spooled loose in my pocket. I yanked it free. As I did, a paper slipped from my jacket. One of the Polaroids I tucked away. Jay's silhouette. Arms raised in that unnerving hallway. I looked around at the walls. Vertical black lines of rack supports, but no door, no hallway. My pulse thundered. A click echoed behind me. I spun to face the only exit. A heavy wood door that had been shut a moment ago and now stood wide open. Beyond was a dimly lit hallway not on any house plan I'd seen. No windows, no art, just concrete walls and exposed pipes. My skin prickled. I stood, pointed my flashlight down the corridor. It stretched in both directions, curving into gloom. A low hum came from somewhere, like electricity humming through cables. I chose the left fork and walked, heels clicking. The hum rose in pitch as I proceeded. The air smelled faintly of ozone. At a junction, I found a door marked private. I twisted the handle. It gave way, swinging inward. Inside was a small office, desk, chair, computer monitor showing a live security feed. 4 black and white feeds, parking lot, foyer, upstairs hallway, and, one I hadn't seen, this very wine cellar. The timestamp blinked, just seconds ago. But I'd been in the wine cellar moments ago. How had the camera caught me there before I arrived? The feed showed me descending the stairs, light trembling across my shoulders. I watched as the feed shifted. The camera panned on its own, settling on the tasting table. Nothing there, no figures, no shadows. I edged closer. The monitor buzzed. An alert in red. Unauthorized access detected. The screen went blank. I slapped the desk, hard, dust rising. In the silence, I heard the whisper again. You shouldn't have come down here. Behind me, footsteps, soft, uneven, as if one foot favored. I turned slowly, light slashing across concrete. No one visible, yet I felt eyes on me. I took a breath and called out, "Show yourself!" No reply. Then the intercom hissed, "All clear," That voice, impossible. The same clipped tone that sent me to the balcony and the studio and all clear after I'd broken in. The contradiction slammed me. I backed out, retraced my steps up the stairs. Only now the staircase had shifted. A landing that should have been on my left was gone, walls sealed. My boots struck solid surface where steps should be. I stumbled, caught the railing, and backed into a wall. The hum grew louder, operating like a pulse, rising and falling. I spun toward a doorway lit by a single bulb. Through the doorway, I glimpsed Jay's silhouette again, this time standing motionless at the far end, head tilted. I called her name, any part of it, but only got the echo of my own voice. I stepped forward, the hum crescendoed into something like distant chanting. No words, but vocal tonality. I felt it more in my chest than heard it. Then the door slammed shut behind me. The bulb flickered and died. Darkness pressed in. My radio squealed to life. Unit 12, status, Flores' voice. I hit the button. I'm stuck, basement, unknown layout. I swallowed. I need extraction now. His voice. Hang tight, 5 seconds. I clicked off the PTT and held my breath. Silence, thick, almost palpable, settled. Then an answering footstep outside the door. A key turned. The door swung open and Flores appeared, face pale. Behind him, 2 officers looked as confused as I felt. I rushed out, relief burning in my chest, flashlight stabbing the corridor behind them. They closed ranks in front of me, weapons raised. I forced a laugh. Wrong house, I said, voice hollow. Sorry. Flores shook his head. We've got every code, every blueprint. No basement like this exists. I let them lead me back up into the foyer, into the night air. Rain had stopped. Fog thinned. The guard post glowed in the distance. We left the gate open behind us. No sirens, no announcement. Just the hum of the city waking. I filed that report, hung up call, no signs of intrusion, house secure. 2 days later, the house changed hands. Renovators tore it down, said the structure was unsound. No mention of the basement that never was. No mention of the voices, the shifting corridors, or the monitor that played back my own unanswered fear. But I know what's down there. I know what I heard in the dark. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that narrow, winding hallway stretching out, calling me back. We got the next call just before 2 a.m., the streetlights flickering as I drove back out. My cruiser's dash clock hit 1:58 a.m. when dispatch announced another hang-up. This time at 4507 Seabreeze Avenue. Caller ID, the same Santa Monica guard post I'd grown to fear. By now, I knew the drill. Slow the cruiser to a crawl, coast through the gate, flashlight and recorder at the ready. Seabreeze Avenue is narrow, lined with palms whose fronds scrape the pavement in the wind. The house stood half hidden behind a high hedge, its Mediterranean facade dark except for one upstairs window where a faint glow pulsed. I parked near the curb, engine off, and listened. No dogs barking, no voices. The only sound was the whisper of my radio set to speaker. Unit 12, 911, hang up at Seabreeze. Proceed with caution. I stepped onto the cracked sidewalk, boots catching on vine roots. My flashlight cut a swath through thick shadows. I approached the front gate. It was unlocked. Hands pressed against the hedge, I peered through. A courtyard lit by moonlight. Tiles slick with condensation. A fountain at the center sprayed mist skyward, catching in my beam like tiny diamonds. No motion. I slipped inside. The front door was ajar. I nudged it open. No creak. Inside, cool air rolled out, scented faintly of jasmine. I clicked on my recorder. Silent. I held it close. The beam traced arched doorways leading to a foyer tiled in mosaic. In the center, a grand chandelier hung dark, crystals dust-coated. I spoke into the recorder, voice low. Sea breeze. Entry unsecured. No response on hail. Down a hallway to my right, I saw a line of arches leading to a living room. I moved there, furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts at a seance. Under one sheet, I glimpsed a guitar headstock, curves unmistakable. I pulled the sheet back. An electric guitar, missing strings, time-stained. I swore I'd heard a riff echo through speakers here before, but there was no amp. I left it covered. I turned and saw footprints in the dust, bare feet again, leading toward the staircase. I followed them, each step measured. Halfway up, a perfume note drifted. Vanilla and cedar, too sweet, too deliberate. At the landing, I stopped. Ahead was the corridor that led to the master. To my left, a narrow door I didn't recognize. A guest closet, maybe? But the plan I'd memorized didn't show it. I pushed through. The closet had no shelves, empty except for a trunk in the middle. I knelt, unlatching it. Inside, Polaroids scattered in disarray. Shots of the house's interior at night, angles I hadn't seen. In each, a shadow loomed. Behind a doorway, around a corner, reflected in glass. I flicked through until one stopped me cold, the unlit foyer. But in the background, in the archway, stood a figure, my silhouette, flashlight held high, recorder pinned to my chest. Dated 2 nights before. I dropped the photo, swearing. Behind me, the closet door clicked shut. I spun, yanked it open, empty. My breath spooled in my lungs. I turned and saw movement at the far end of the hall. A door to the master suite swung slightly, as if someone had paused before opening it. I crept forward. Inside the master, a single wall sconce cast half the room in softness, half in shadow. The bed was made, but one pillow was missing its case. On the nightstand, a phone lit up, screen glowing with a single missed call. I picked it up. No number, just a timestamp. 2:01 a.m. I set it down, caught by something on the floor. A set of footprints leading to the ensuite. I followed. The ensuite was tiled in pale marble and cool underfoot. The shower door was open, steam still rising. No water ran. Towels lay on the floor, damp. I flicked on my flashlight. Beam caught on the vanity mirror. Someone had written, fogged into the glass, "Stay." My recorder crackled. Tape jam, no display. I cursed, yanked it out. Empty, no tape. I reached into my coat, pulled the back up, already unwound. I held both in my hands, useless. I pressed them to my chest, breath shallow. Then an abrupt silence fell, so sudden I nearly heard the blood in my ears. The steam stilled, the hum of the house cut out. I stood in perfect stillness. Then a single, deliberate knock came from somewhere behind me, slow, resonant, on marble. I whipped around, beam, searching. Nothing. I edged back toward the door, the mirror's fog, his message. "Stay." But behind it, in the unlit corner, I thought I saw her, Jay's silhouette again. Fingers pressed to glass, head tilted. I swallowed, tried to shake the memory. I stepped backward. My boot hit something, a photo. I bent, picked it up, the foyer shot, taken at dusk, but no footprints in dust. This one showed too. Endless footsteps crescendoed in my head as the hallway beyond the door brightened. Lamps sparked on in sequence, revealing 2 uniformed officers with their weapons trained on me. Flores in the lead, eyes wide with disbelief. I raised my hands. He closed the distance and said quietly, 12, get down. I sank to my knees, heart pounding. He stepped forward, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. There's no tape, nothing in your recorder, and no signs of anyone else. he said, voice low. "But these photos, these weren't here when we arrived." He held one up. The second figure was me, kneeling in the ensuite, staring at the mirror. I couldn't speak. The air felt thin, each breath a labor. Outside, the storm that had promised to arrive earlier began again. Rain pelting against windows like machine gun fire. The officers looked at each other, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Flores knelt beside me. "We're getting you out," he said. "Now." He helped me to my feet, gently but firmly. As I stood, I caught a final glimpse of the ensuite mirror, fogged again, fresh writing etched across it. "Found you." We retreated down the stairs in tight formation, weapons ready, but no shadows followed. Outside, I slid into the back of the cruiser. Flores climbed in beside me, tossing me the keys. "Take us home," he said. We drove away without lights or siren. No one followed. When I filed that report, I wrote, "Hang-up call, minor disturbance, no suspects, no evidence. The photographs were logged as evidence, sealed in the locker." I never saw them again. But sometimes, in sleep, I feel the knock on marble and hear the whisper, "Stay." And I know that somewhere behind locked doors, in empty rooms, she waits, calling me back. We got the call just after 3 a.m., the time when the city exhales and all its secrets slip in through the cracks. I'd barely processed the last incident when dispatch came back on, voice tight. "Unit 12, hang up at 5128 Pelican Point. Caller ID, Santa Monica Guard Post." I should have recognized the dread that came with hearing that number, like a pulse knotting in my throat, but by then it was second nature. I grabbed my jacket, flicked on the recorder, tape intact this time, and slid into the cruiser, headlights carving a path through the pre-dawn mist. Pelican Point Road winds along the bluff, cliffside homes perched like watchtowers over the Pacific. The moon hung low, half hidden by ragged clouds. I entered the code, gate groaning open, and eased down the drive. At the end sat a 2-story villa with darkened windows except for a single light on the upper balcony. Rain had finally fallen, slicking the road and varnishing the hedges with beads. I parked out of sight and killed the engine, listening to the wash of waves below and the static hum of my radio. Inside the villa, the front hall felt cavernous, tile floors stretching into shadows, walls painted in cool grays, modern art that loomed like sentinels. I flicked my flashlight in lazy arcs. No dog, no guard, no sign of forced entry. I clicked the recorder, voice low. Pelican Point. Entry secured, proceeding interior. The tape clicked in rhythm with the drip of water from the open-air atrium in the center of the house. Ahead, a hallway branched left to the kitchen and right to a library. The kitchen gleamed stainless and dark wood, appliances silent. On the counter, a coffee mug lay on its side, last night's drip still congealing inside. I rounded the island to find footprints in the dust on the windowsill, small, barefoot. I followed them up 3 steps onto the breakfast bar and then to the window, where the view to the bluff was bathed in gray dawn. I pressed my hand to the pane. The glass was warm. Someone had leaned here minutes before. I moved to the library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves brimmed with books, collectible editions, leather spines fading in the low light. A ladder lay on its side, foot broken. I knelt, ran a finger along a title, an autobiography of a famous director whose name, like Jay's, I never uttered in reports. I stood and swept the room. In the far corner, a desk under a green banker's lamp held family photos. Smiling faces around a Christmas tree, a toddler with a burning trunk of hair that framed her face like a halo. Beneath the photos lay a folded sheet of paper. I slid it open, a page torn from a notebook, scrawled in block letters. They don't know I'm hiding. No signature, no context. My recorder crackled to life. Flores' voice, faster, urgent. Status 12. SWAT is en route. I pressed the PTT. I'm clear here. No movement. House empty, sort of. I paused. I've got evidence of presence. Might be hostiles. He answered, copy, stand by. I clicked off, heart pounding in the hush. Upstairs, the corridor stretched past 3 doors. The first led to a guest room. Empty, but on the bed lay a black hoodie with J's initials embroidered on the cuff. I slipped it into evidence bag. The second door led to a bathroom. Steamy, towels damp, floor wet. No shower on, no drain running. A fine mist clung to the tiles. In the corner, small paw prints in the steam. Kitten tracks. I frowned. No dogs, but maybe a cat. I moved on. The third door, at the corridor's end, was ajar. Light spilling out. I paused, hand on holster, and knocked once. Los Angeles County, I said. Anyone here? Silence, then a soft rustle. I pushed in. The master bedroom was opulent. Canopy bed with draped fabric. Chaise long by the windows. A grand piano in the corner. The light came from a desk lamp. On the desk lay an audio recorder of higher grade than mine. Blinking REC, I approached. Heart clenching. The display read a timestamp from 2 nights ago. I hit play, low static, then Jay's voice, trembling. I can't keep this secret anymore. They're in the walls. A soft click, and a man's voice I didn't recognize. You signed the NDA. No one must know. Jay sobbed, but if I don't, then silence. The tape ended. My recorder mirroring mine picked up the playback through the piano frame. I clicked it off and tucked it away. The chaise by the window, upholstered in black velvet, had been moved. Its legs sank into the carpet at an odd angle. I knelt, fingers brushing fibers, and found scratches, like claws, etched in the wood. Someone had been hiding there, watching. Behind me, the intercom buzzed. Unit 12, clear to proceed. That voice, still not Flores. Proceed? For what? I swallowed, then saw it. The balcony door open, curtains whipping in the breeze. I approached. Outside, the deck wrapped around the villa like a crown. A single chaise out here facing the water sat overturned. Footprints led away across the wet boards. Barefoot again, toes splayed. I followed them to the far railing, where the glass had been smashed. Shards littered below. I peered over the edge. Marina lights flickered in the bay. No body, no movement. Yet I felt a presence behind me. I turned. In the open doorway, Jay stood, arms folded, silhouette sharp against the lamp. But it couldn't have been her. I'd seen she was abroad that week. Heart hammering, I called out, "Ma'am, step down." She didn't move. I clicked my flashlight on her face, just black fabric where features should be. My recorder screamed alive in my pocket. Tape engaged itself. I yanked it out. The tape's edge was frayed, scorched. I tried to power it off, dead. In its place, I found a slip of paper tucked in the slot. Help me. No signature, no date. The figure advanced 1 step. The wind behind her slammed the door shut. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I raised my voice. "Santa Monica PD. Open up." Nothing. The intercom buzzed 1 last time. Extraction canceled. That voice. Flat. Mocking. Then headlights swept across the deck. The SWAT team arriving too late. I pounded on the door. They pounded back from the other side, battering ram in hand. I stepped back as the door exploded inward, flameless candles scattering. The team rushed in, shouting commands, guns raised. I collapsed against the doorframe, blinking in the flood of light. They cleared the room. No one there. No J, no figure, no sign of recent occupancy beyond the broken glass and footprints. The audio recorder I'd found was gone, vanished in the sudden darkness. My tape recorder lay at my feet, dead. The scratch marks on the chaise, the mug of cold coffee in the kitchen, the Polaroids that had appeared on my cruiser's dash. Those remained. We bagged the chaise, photographed the footprints, and loaded me into an ambulance to check vitals. I filed my report in the morning. Hang-up call. Minor structural damage, no suspects, evidence collected. 2 days later, Pelican Point was quietly sold. Renovators stripped the villa to studs, said it was contaminated by mold. No mention of basement corridors that appeared on emergency plans, or of voices in the vinyl, or of a figure that lingered just out of clear sight. No mention of the imploded intercom or the canceled extraction order. But I know what happened at Pelican Point. I know that Jay's voice still echoes in my recorder when it works, and that the wind carries her plea through the dunes below. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in and the waves thunder against those cliffs, I smell jasmine and hear a single, deliberate knock on wood, calling me back to the darkness I can never leave behind. We got called out again before dawn broke, a soft chime on the dispatch console just as I was dozing in the bunk room. The log said 6112 Mariner's Cove, another hang-up from the same guard post. I felt the pit open in my stomach before I even read the address. By now, I knew better than to sleep on call-outs from that number, but my body was running out of fight or flight. I hit the locker, strapped on vest and holster, and grabbed my recorder. This time, I taped fresh tape into it myself. I slid into the cruiser, engine sputtering to life, and punched in the code. The drive was a slow roll through gated communities built on reclaimed marshland. Morning mist lay low over the bay, hiding pilings and docks in ghostly forms. Mariner's Cove had a single entrance, 2 security towers, and cameras that tracked every vehicle. No motion lights would trigger unless an alarm was set, yet every time I drove through, the cameras didn't pick me up until I was halfway down the street. I entered the code and the gate clicked open, but the post lights never came on. I parked at the curb in front of an angular glass house with a sweeping roofline. The plaque read the estate belonged to someone they called S, a pop star turned reclusive philanthropist. Windows were dark except for one light in what looked like an upstairs studio. No breeze through these sealed panes. I clicked the recorder on. Mariner's Cove, entry secured, proceeding interior. Tape word. Inside, the foyer felt cavernous. Granite floors, minimalist furnishings, abstract sculptures balanced on pedestals. I swept the flashlight across smooth stone, every beam bouncing on polished surfaces until it landed on a single overturned chair. I knelt, turned it upright, cushion torn at the seam. No one had cleared it before locking up. I radioed in, voice low. Chair overturned in foyer. No response on hail. Silence, then Flores. SWATETA 8 minutes. I moved into the great room. A cathedral ceiling. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. A piano sat at the center under a protective cover. The cover was ripped, fabric shredded along one side. I lifted it. No dust on the keys, glossy and ready. I tapped a middle C with a gloved finger. The note rang, clear as a bell, echoing through the empty space. But there was no cable to an amp, no speakers wired here. I closed the cover. Lining the far wall were canvases, blank, black frames. No art inside. I pressed my flashlight against one, felt a panel shift. I tapped. It swung inward on hidden hinges. Inside, a safe with a fingerprint scanner, no code panel. I leaned in, finger itching to press my print, but stepped back. If someone rigged a scanner here, they weren't planning to welcome an officer. Upstairs, the corridor was silent. A single sconce at the T-junction flickered. To the left, 3 bedroom doors. To the right, a sliding door to the studio where the light burned. I knocked on the studio door, once firm. No sound. I tried the handle, unlocked. Inside, a mixing console glowed with screen light, dials spinning on their own. The intercom hissed, "Check the basement." That voice, impossible. Not dispatch, not Flora's. My heart sank. I stayed in the doorway, beam sweeping. The studio was empty, but for one mic stand, a laptop, and a music manuscript pinned to a board. Lyrics I recognized from a song S wrote a decade ago. In the margin, someone had scrawled new verses. Lines about hiding from ghosts, a voice in the walls, a secret underneath the stage. The handwriting wasn't hers. I snapped a photo with my phone. Too shaky to make out clearly. I left without touching anything else and found the stairs. They curved down. Only the floor plan didn't show a basement here. Yet the panel beside the stairs was labeled "Stairs to Lower." I pressed the call button. The lights flickered and I heard a click. The stairs descended, marble giving way to concrete. I dropped to one knee and checked my recorder, tape still rolling. At the bottom, the corridor was narrow, walls unpainted, pipes overhead. I felt the temperature drop. My breath fogged. I clicked on my flashlight. Beam cut through the gloom. I stepped forward. Away from me, a door stood cracked, a soft orange light spilling out. I approached, every sense sharp. A low murmur drifted through the crack. I knocked, 2 sharp raps. The murmuring paused, then resumed, heavier, like voices overlapping. I pressed my ear to the door. On the other side, I heard S's voice, softer, vulnerable, broken. I thought this place would hide me. Then another voice, male, clipped. You promised we'd be safe." S sobbed, I know. Then the door rattled. I forced it open. Inside was a vast underground performance space. Stage bare, rows of seats sprawling into darkness. The orange light came from candles flickering on the stage edge. In the center, 2 figures crouched together. One was S, head bowed, hair covering her face. The other was the man from the study, fedora low, standing too close. I raised my voice. "Los Angeles County, step away." They froze. The man looked up, face half hidden in shadow, features sharp. I recognized him from old tabloid photos. A music exec long rumored to disappear after controversies. His grin was slow, predatory. S pushed him back, arms shaking. "You said no one would ever know," she hissed. He reached out, grabbed her wrist. She yanked it free, stumbled back against a seat. I raised my gun. "Let her go." The exec spoke in a low monotone. "We all have to keep the secret, officer." My finger tightened on the trigger. Behind me, the intercom buzzed. Extraction canceled. That voice, again. I spun. The auditorium exit behind me had slid shut, sealed metal, no latch. I glanced at the stage. The candles had drifted into an arc around S and the executive. Their flames flickered unnaturally tall, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move independently. I shouted, "Step away now!" The exec laughed, soft as a knife twisting. "This place is ours. You aren't supposed to find us." S's head snapped up, eyes wild. She ran toward me, arms outstretched. Her voice cracked, "Help me!" I hesitated, then lowered the gun. She was unarmed. The exec backed away, hands raised mockingly. "Officer," he said, "just record what you see." The intercom crackled. "Proceed to the gate, Unit 12. That voice, commanding. I felt the tape recorder in my pocket vibrate. I yanked it out, but the display read error. No tape, no recording. S reached me and whispered, so close I felt her breath. "They'll come for us." Then her eyes locked on mine. "You have to promise you won't leave me here." My throat ached. The exec chuckled low. I looked to the locked exit, then back at the pair. I holstered my gun. "I can't," I said. "You have to come with me." He stepped forward. "You know what happens when the lights go out." The candles wavered. S's grip loosened as a rushing sound filled the space, like footsteps all around us. My head spun. I yelled, "Get back!" and swung my flashlight at the exec's face. The beam caught in his mask-like grin. He lunged at me. We tumbled. I wrestled free, shoved him toward S. She screamed. I dove for the stage curtain, thick velvet, and ripped it down. As it fell, every candle extinguished at once. Darkness roared. My heart thundered. I fumbled for my light. None. I reached for my radio. Dead. My pulse echoed in my ears. An answering silence pressed in so tight I could taste it. Then a single whisper. "You found us." Not from the stage, not from the seats, inside me. I scrambled forward, hands grazing the stage floor. My knee struck something smooth, the metal edge of an elevator door I never knew existed. I yanked the button panel. No power. I slammed on the door. It shuddered, then slid open, revealing a shaft of blackness. Behind me, a footstep. Then another, closer. I backed into the shaft, gripped the side rails, ready to climb. The exec's voice called, low and amused. "Come back, please." S sobbed behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. Two tall shapes emerged from the gloom. Faces hidden behind mirrors, reflecting nothing but the stage lights that once were. I backed into the shaft, heart in my throat, and began to climb. Above me, a faint glow. Maybe the next floor, maybe just my mind playing tricks. I pulled myself up as fast as I could, climbing out of Disneyland-style trapdoor onto a catwalk above the stage. My flashlight flickered on, revealing a maintenance corridor I'd never seen on any blueprint. Behind me, S's sobs and the exec's laughter echoed up the shaft. I stumbled down the corridor, pressing the intercom button on the wall. Nothing. Then I reached a door marked "Staff Only." I kicked it open and spilled into the kitchen I'd passed on the main floor. The lights were on, water running in a sink behind the bar. A towel lay folded on the counter next to two coffee mugs, one still half full. I grabbed both, dashed back into the corridor. Down another flight of back stairs, I saw daylight seeping through louvered vents above. I fell through a hatch onto the patio outside, drew my sidearm, and called into the shadows. "S, follow me." No answer. I raced around the house, beating on doors until I found a side gate unlocked. I burst through into the street just as Flores's cruiser arrived, lights off. He jumped out, rifle ready. I backed away, hands raised. "She's down there," I gasped, nodding at the villa. Inside. He radioed in, and in minutes we had an entry team tearing down doors. I stood in the mist as they swept the house. No sign of S, no exec, no candles, no auditorium, no secret corridors. Just an empty stage under a draped piano. I filed the report under sealed records. Trespass, no suspects, evidence destroyed. They said the house's design plans showed no lower level, no trapdoors, no auditorium. They blamed faulty blueprints, structural hazards, and miscommunication. 2 weeks later, Mariner's Cove was evacuated for a failed remodel. Plumbing leaks, alleged mold. But I know what's down there. I know the candles, the arc of fire around that stage, the voices in the walls begging to be heard. And sometimes, when I pass a music hall and the lights go dark, I swear I hear a piano note ring out, and a voice whisper, "You shouldn't have come."